Lately, I've been having this dream where I arrive in a new town and all the townsfolk, well, I can't see their faces. They're all covered in this shadow. The shadow of this huge building looming over me, over them, over the whole town. And just as I awaken, the building comes into focus. Okay, so my dream may be a little dramatic, but recently I came to the realization that as much as I don't want to support big corp Joja Mart, so much so that the Joja Company member achievement is actually one of the few I don't have yet for Stardew Valley, I also don't feel too great about supporting Pierre and his House of Lies. For this playthrough, I will be lumping Pierre and Joja together and boycotting both of them for a complete year. My primary goals for this run are to finish the community center, invite Krobus to live with me, and earn 1 million gold. As a bonus goal, I might also try to earn all 7 star drops. We'll see. The lack of seeds will make the goals of this run a challenge, but that's the point, right? Speaking of seeds, I picked up my 15 parsnip seeds from Lewis first thing on day 1. Made my little forest house a bit more cozy, then got to work felling trees and clearing out some land to farm on. I will be holding off planting my parsnip seeds until after I reach level 1 farming and have access to scarecrows and basic fertilizer to give myself the best shot at the 5 gold parsnips needed for the quality crops bundle. Around 9 AM, I headed into town to meet the only person I'd be actively building a relationship with this week. Tea saplings are part of my early game money making strategy, so I will be trying to cultivate a friendship with Caroline as quickly as possible. Later that night, I began to cultivate the 15 mixed seeds I scythed up throughout the day. From these seeds, I'm hoping for at least 1 potato for the community center, since I already have parsnip seeds and can get cauliflower seeds from donating to the museum. We'll talk about green beans a little later on. In the early morning light of day 2, I saw that I was in fact growing 1 and only 1 potato, so I would be keeping the crops at 15 or under to avoid the risk of losing my solitary potato to the crows. Caroline had her quest up on the board today and she was looking for a parsnip. Essentially, this request is impossible to fulfill. The quest would end on day 3, which is 2 days before my parsnips would be harvestable. Not to mention, day 3 is a scripted rainy day Wednesday and Pierre will be locking Caroline inside for the duration of the day. His treatment of his wife and customers on days like that is another reason I decided to boycott him and his wares this run. In addition to tea sapling funds, fishing will be another way I acquire gold early game, so I set up my ocean chest and made my first of many casts. Chests in random places will be the gold standard for this run, as boycotting Pierre means I won't be able to upgrade my backpack, ever. But that's the price I'm willing to pay. Speaking of gold and chests, I fished up enough ore in a treasure chest to smelt the gold bar needed for the community center. That night, I passed out on the pier mid-cast, but I did reach level 2 fishing. Clint showed up on my stoop on day 3, but I managed to avoid the introduction by quickly skipping that cutscene. Then I headed to sell Willie my haul and settle in for another fun day of fishing, passing out mid-cast for the 2nd night in a row, but managing another 2 levels of fishing. Day 4, Caroline had a more reasonable request on the help wanted board. But first, I wanted to stop over at the museum. I would be trying to acquire the rusty key as quickly as possible to afford myself enough time to get on Krobus' good side. Though Krobus must be a circle, cause all his sides are good sides. But I'll be here all week. Next, I delivered Caroline her dandelion. 1 heart down, 1 heart to go. I spent the rest of the day fishing as there was little else to do until the mines open tomorrow, and I managed to reach level 5 fishing, selecting the Fisher perk. I got the best news on day 5 when Welwick let me know my first mines day would be accompanied by the highest luck possible. Then Marnie dropped off my new cat, who I named Tea. I picked all of my parsnips from the mixed seeds. Unsurprisingly, none of them were gold quality as I had 0 farming experience. After triggering the community center cutscene, I headed inside to check the scroll to ensure the wizard would be contacting me on the morrow, before heading north for a long day of mine spelunking. I made it to level 15 late in the evening, which I thought was pretty good progress for my first day in the mines. Overnight, I reached level 2 forging and level 1 mining. After taking care of my crops on day 6, I headed over to see the wizard and learn the mystical Junimo language for official access to the community center bundles. On my way to the museum to make a few donations, I found a lovely bean hot pot in Gus's rubbish bin, and picked up a quest to bring Willie a refined quartz, then dropped off gems and artifacts I'd found while cave diving. The museum now had 11 items on display, and Gunther gave me some precious cauliflower and melon seeds in return. That afternoon, I donated the items needed for the Spring Forge bundle, and headed back to the mines for more floor progression, reaching my goal of floor 20 before 8 p.m. I returned home fairly early that evening to clear a bit more of the land while harvesting wood needed to make tea saplings. My potato had grown on day 7, giving me that much needed item for the community center, and I actually harvested 2 potatoes for the price of 1. My mixed seeds cauliflower would be done in a few days, but I would also need a green bean for the spring crops bundle, a crop that cannot be obtained through mixed seeds. So I headed down to the traveling cart as my community center success would rest entirely in her hands. She didn't have a green bean or green bean starter with her today, but I wasn't too worried, as I had until the 18th to plant the starter, or even longer if she brought the crop itself. I gave Willie the bar of quartz he'd requested and left some fish in the ocean chest for my selling convenience, then crushed geodes with Clint, and made my daily donations to Gunther at the museum. We were at 18 total items after today's geode haul. That morning, I sold enough fish to Willie to have over 2,000 gold, then promptly spent most of those earnings on a much-needed axe upgrade. I couldn't resist returning to the traveling cart to purchase the summer spangle she was selling for 360 gold, as I knew Caroline would love the flower and gifting it to her would speed up access to the tea sapling funds. I was now within 50 points of reaching 2 hearts with Caroline, so I could begin talking to other villagers today if I felt like it. I hung out fishing at a bubble spot off the pier that afternoon, and just stayed there fishing well into the evening, only moving up to the mountain lake to fish after the bubbles had dissipated. That night, I did a bit of inventory shuffling, placing all of my community center items into a single chest to help myself stay organized and on track for completion. It was a beautiful rainy day for the start of week 2, and my dad sent me 500 gold in the mail, so I knew this week was going to be great. After dropping anchor with Gunther at the museum, I headed in to chat with Caroline, and while I could have brought a gift to bump us to 2 hearts today, it was raining, and I'm pretty sure you need a sunny day for the tea room cutscene, so I might as well wait until tomorrow to reach the required friendship. My main goal for today was mining for ore and geodes, as well as harvesting as much fiber as possible, though I did make it to floor 30 tonight as well. Fun fact, floor 30 is the only multiple of 10 where you will not find a treasure chest waiting for you as you progress down the regular mine. As I nodded off for an early sleep, I dreamt of reaching level 1 combat and level 2 mining. On day 9, I wanted to up my forage farming game for future tea saplings, so I planted a good chunk of wild spring seeds before heading out to gift Caroline a parsnip, officially reaching 2 hearts and gaining access to her lovely tea room with the highly anticipated tea sapling recipe to follow the next morning. Then I swapped out my axe for a pickaxe upgrade with Clint and took my freshly upgraded axe for a little deforestation loop around Cindersnap, finishing up my chopping for the day back on the farm later that night, ultimately reaching level 3 foraging. First thing on day 10, I checked the mail for that wonderful tea sapling recipe, but I didn't have too many wild seeds ready, so I watered the crops and got ready for my day. I headed over to the community center to complete the construction bundle, receiving a charcoal kiln, then finished up the blacksmith's bundle thanks to ores found while fishing. Today is Vincent's birthday, and I have a theory that Evelyn always has cookies for you to find on the children's special day, and this run, she did not disappoint. Now, I'm not saying this 100% occurs, but I've had it happen a lot. Leave a like if you think Evelyn should receive the Stardew Valley Granny of the Year award. I gave the cookies to Vincent, after wiping them off, of course, then made my first tea saplings once back on the farm later that afternoon. In addition to not buying from Pierre, I will not be selling to him either, which means the tea saplings went straight to the shipping bin, and I would have to ensure I planned out most of my funding needs a day in advance for the duration of this run. That evening, I made my first tappers and cleared out more of my farm, finding my first morel down in the lower left corner. Wow, it was even a gold star. All the farm clearing that evening let me hit level 4 foraging overnight. Day 11 meant Robin's axe needed finding, and I had completely forgotten I told Gus I'd bring him an amethyst by tonight, so I headed down into Cindersnap to play hide and seek with the kiddos, then with the axe. Well, really just seek. I dropped in to pick up my axe from Clint before heading to Robin's to return her lost tool. Can't leave a carpenter without their axe for too long. I also asked her to start on a coop since I should really work on animal products for the community center. I brought Gus the amethyst he requested, and on a whim gave Emily the other one I had on me, since I knew it was a love gift. I'm not looking to find a partner for the flower dance, but it doesn't hurt to start friending the locals. Friday morning, I lost my first crop to the crows. I'm about 6 points from leveling up farming, but my cauliflower should be ready soon, so the scarecrow wait is almost over. The traveling merchant was in town, and she had a poppy seed I'd need for a bundle, and it was actually in my price range. Nice. To pass on my good fortune, I took another relic haul over to Gunther, so now we are sitting at a cool 23 items donated. I tooled around the rest of the day, ending the night back on the farm to clear up more trees and debris. Overnight, I sold 7,500 gold worth of tea saplings, earning the Green Horn achievement and ensuring I had funds for the festival to... Oh, wait a minute. Isn't the festival vendor today Pierre? Rip strawberries this run. But oh well. I took advantage of the festival to introduce myself to any villagers I'd missed meeting, finally finishing up the introductions quest from day 1. I ended the festival day only after crushing the competition at the egg hunt. After everyone cleared out of town, I wanted to do my daily trash run, but it looks like Linus beat me to it as there was absolutely nothing left in the bins tonight. I did hit level 1 farming overnight, so I would finally be planting my parsnips come morning. Right away on day 14, I crafted my very first scarecrow and a quick batch of basic fertilizer to up my chances of gold quality snips for the community center. I would need 5 total at gold quality, and even though I have 15 crops to work with, I will have to get a little creative to make sure I hit my number goal. You'll see what I mean in a bit. Sunday meant another trip to the traveling cart, and I was overjoyed to see that she had the bean starter I so desperately needed. I also grabbed the lobster bisque since a +3 fishing buff is a hard thing to pass up this early in the run. Once back home, I planted down my precious bean plant, then headed out to gift Haley a daffodil for her birthday. I'd married Haley in my bingo challenge run, but romancing villagers is not in the cards for this run, partly because I can't buy a bouquet unless I shop at Pierre's, but also because I've never had Krobus as a roommate, and that needs to change. Speaking of Krobus, I had a couple more donations for the museum today. Only 35 to go before we have access to the sewer key. I spent that night diving back into the mines, falling just shy of the lift on floor 45 before calling it for the night, and achieving level 3 mining and level 2 combat. My coop was ready on the morning of day 15, but it was a Monday, which meant that Marnie would be MIA for the next 2 days minimum, and it would be a few days before I could buy a chicken or 2. I got 2 dramatic lid removals in a row while doing my rubbish run, but my pack was full. Anyone know if this means I missed out on the garbage hat proc? Since it was supposed to rain tomorrow, I dropped off my watering can for an upgrade, then brought another haul over to the museum, followed by a haul to the community center for a geode reward. I headed back to the mines for the second night in a row, progressing to floor 50 late into the night. My forage crops were ready on day 16, so after I harvested them, I crafted more seeds to do my final forage replanting. Then I spent some time picking salmon berries, as these would be a nice energy boost for future cave diving endeavors. It was raining, and I couldn't ignore the siren song of the catfish, so I spent a good portion of the afternoon fishing in the river, before moving on to do some rainy night eel fishing in the ocean. That night I reached level 5 foraging, selecting Gatherer to increase potential apple collection for the community center, and I hit level 6 fishing. Demetrius was on my porch the morning of day 17, and I asked him to focus on fruit bats, as this was the only way I'd have a shot at collecting certain fruit needed for the community center. Speaking of the community center, I had everything I needed for the exotic foraging bundle, so I headed over to turn them in, before seeing Clint about my watering can, geode smashing, and a pickaxe upgrade. Gotta keep him busy so his mind is off Emily for a bit. After today's donations to the museum, I'm at 34 total items out of my Krobus goal of 60. Slow and steady wins the race, right? Thankfully, Marnie was back to work when I stopped in this morning, so I was able to purchase a white chicken named Latte and a brown chicken named Chai. Hey there, little cuties. Then it was back on the fishing grind for the evening. I was hoping to reach level 7 fishing tonight, and if I could achieve this, I had a feeling that tomorrow would be the stuff of legends. That night, I made a ridiculous amount of tea saplings for this point in the run, and did, in fact, manage to reach level 7 fishing. Time to enact my master fishing plan. But first, I need to enact my slightly cheesy but oh so necessary parsnip plan in order to harvest the 5 golden quality snips needed for the community center. Step 1. Harvest all the parsnips, paying attention to which spots grant golden quality produce. Survey says, none. Exactly none. Okay, on to step 2. Restart the day. If I had discovered any gold quality plots, those would be the only crops I would pluck at this time, but because it was a big goose egg, I am just going to try again tomorrow. And now to prepare for my second plan of the day, I upgraded to the iridium rod at Willie's shop, purchased a trap bobber, then headed on over to the mountain lake with the lobster bisque in hand. I chomped down on that bowl of goodness, bumping me up to an inflated level 10 fishing. It wasn't long before I hooked the focus of my fishing endeavor, and just as quickly, he was lost to the depths of the lake. It was a while before I hooked him again, and yet again, whoops. Okay, 3rd time's the charm. Come on, and yes, we did it! I've never caught the legend year 1 in a playthrough before, and it has taken a lot of fishing practice to get to the point where it was even possible this run. If you're like me and have struggled with the fishing mechanic, I would highly recommend checking out my buddy Aramy's fishing tutorial. I'll leave the link in the description. With my main goal completed for the day, I fished in my farm pond, hoping for a wood skip but only building up my trash collection. Before I headed to bed, I remembered it was Pam's birthday. Lucky for me, she stays out late at the saloon, so I was able to deliver her a birthday parsnip. Friday morning, it was time to revisit the parsnip lottery. I had 2 plots of gold, so I did my restart to pluck only those 2 and continued on my day. I brought Jody the cauliflower she requested. Next, I visited the traveling cart and was excited to see she had the blueberry seeds I would need come summer. For the summer crops bundle, I would ultimately need to find tomatoes in addition to the blueberry seed, as these 2 crops will not grow from mixed seeds. My pickaxe was ready, so I would be able to get back to mining. But first, I needed to drop off another haul to the museum, 39 items and counting. I spent the rest of the night digging in the dirt in search of more relics for the museum, but finding none, I continued on, unlocking floor 55 later that evening. On my way home that night, I showed Clint some of the copper ores I'd picked up for a quick little payday. 1 more parsnip was gold quality on day 20, so I have another 2 to find for the community center. And I have about a week to do it, so I'm not worried, yet. Today, I left my axe with Clint for the steel upgrade, then donated my 40th item to the museum, earning the treasure trove achievement. That night, I took to the mines again, making it to floor 70 extremely late. So late that I passed out right in front of Robin's house. But I managed to reach level 3 combat and level 4 mining for my trouble. There was only 1 more gold quality parsnip the next morning, but the cave bats had left me an orange, and I still needed to take a trip to the traveling cart. Today, she had all manner of goodies for me. I picked up a sunflower I'd need for the dye bundle, a crocus for winter forage, and a yam seed needed for the fall crops. Speaking of bundles, I finished up the Adventurers bundle this afternoon, fully completing the boiler room and collecting a magnetic ring, 1 room down for my community center goals. Later on, I requested Robin build a silo on my farm, while on my way up to the mines for more level progression. I hit level 80 tonight, picking up my Firewalker boots to better protect myself in the coming levels. Completion of the boiler room meant the Junimos did their first magical dance of the challenge, and traveling around town will be much more convenient for me from here on out. On day 22, I harvested the final gold quality parsnip needed, so no more day resetting. Until summer, that is. Then I took my maiden minecart voyage to collect some geodes I'd left at the chest at the mines. Clint had finished with my axe, and I set him to work on geodes for museum donations, bumping me up to a cool 46. I don't think Clint knew he was in for such a busy spring, but next I had him upgrading my hoe, and I spent more time working through the mines, reaching a level 90 and the obsidian edge before the night was through. I remembered last minute that Clint had requested a green algae, and I decided I would take the time to bring it to him since he had really been helping me out this run. Trust me, no one's as shocked as I am. I crafted a new batch of tea saplings to sell that night, and managed to reach level 2 farming, level 5 mining, and level 4 combat. What a busy cowpoke day. My last big batch of forageables was ready on day 23, and there wasn't enough time to replant, so I would just be turning them into wild seeds for more lovely tea saplings. There was a solo peach in the back cave that would be going directly into my community center chest for the artisan bundle. That morning, I took my newly upgraded axe for a jaunt around the secret woods, and later unlocked the eastern beach for access to even more forageables. I wanted to make more progress in the mines, but the next floor was infested and I wasn't really feeling the grind, so instead I did some fiber farming in the higher levels for the remainder of the night. The extra areas really helped out with forage experience as I reached level 6, unlocking lightning rods well before the summer storms came. My last batch of cauliflower and my first green bean were ready on day 24, and while I wanted to do a quick forage through the secret woods, the flower dance had other plans. Right, the dance. Yeah. I had not been working much on relationships, and Pierre was the vendor at that event, so I think I'll pass. The green bean was the last crop needed for the spring crops bundle, so I turned them all in at the community center and collected my reward of speed grow. Then it was mining time. I'd collected a pretty good amount of fiber and copper ore, and my mine's chest was overflowing, so I did a bit of inventory management with the aid of the super helpful mine carts. By the end of the night, I was able to craft another 16 tea saplings, so I'd say missing the dance was the right choice. I hadn't been on a forage run in a few days, so I stopped in to grab a lovely batch of spring onions the next morning. Then I picked up my hoe from Clint and had him break a few geodes, before handing my hoe back over for another upgrade. Then it was back to the mines for more fiber. If you're wondering why I'm working so hard on fiber for tea saplings, one of my hidden goals for this run is to finish the vault bundle before summer. I've never done this before, and I would need a total of 42,500 gold to accomplish this task, so wish me luck. In addition to fiber, I'd need more wood, so I cleared more trees off the farm late into the night, selling another 13 tea saplings overnight. It's the final Friday in spring, and that means another chance for summer seeds at the traveling cart. I no longer needed the green bean, but hopefully her selling this means she'll have other crops I need for bundles. The only other item that caught my eye was a lobster I could use in the crab pot bundle, but I decided not to buy it yet and instead crafted a crab pot of my own to place into the ocean. I found a fried mushroom in the saloon trash can that I used to help with mine progression that afternoon, reaching floor 100 before it became too terribly late. All my cave diving paid off as I reached level 5 combat that night. My final crops of the season were ready on a lovely rainy day Saturday morning, and both my chickens had laid large eggs for the animal bundle. Clint had finished with my hoe, so I did my traditional geode processing. On my way back through town, I came across a bubble spot, so I fished there for a little bit until they disappeared. Later on that afternoon, I brought Emily a topaz for her birthday, and spent the night fishing up rainy day river fish. Overnight, I hit level 8 fishing and sold almost 5,000 gold worth of fish and forageables. So I had just enough money when I awoke the next morning to buy all the bundles in the vault. But first, I had a few farm chores, like checking in on the bat cave. This apple was hiding in the corner, but I spotted it, and now we are one closer to the 3 needed for the fodder bundle. The traveling cart was my next stop this morning, and I decided to pick up the lobster this time as it was quite a bit cheaper and would let me finish the crab pot bundle today. But first, it was time to drop off all my hard-earned money into the vault, finishing off that room in one fell swoop. I added a jade to my newly acquired crystallarium, then headed back to the community center to fill out the crab pot bundle. Since the bus to the desert would be fixed tomorrow, it was now even more important to reach the bottom of the mines, so I headed in for a little more floor progression, making it another 10 levels to floor 110. Once back on the farm, I made a few more tea saplings so that I would have the funds for my first trip to the desert tomorrow, if the mood strikes me. My troubled dreams have returned, only this time, I see a dilapidated building full of little bouncy orbs. But there's one orb in particular that catches my eye. It's a red orb, and the orb grows bigger and bigger, and it's so red, and then everything is red, and in the distance, I hear laughter of Pierre and Morris taunting me, and then I wake up. It's the first day of summer, and despite my dream, both the spirits and I are in good humor and looking forward to the season ahead. After sprucing up my garden a touch, I set to work planting my stash of summer seeds and the mixed seeds I'd acquired in spring. Out of these mixed seeds, I'm hoping for the 10 wheat needed for the fodder bundle, at least 1 pepper, and enough corn so that I can acquire the 5 gold quality crops needed for the quality crops bundle. I had purchased a blueberry seed as well as a poppy from the traveling cart, so combined with my museum melons, that meant I was only missing the tomato and red cabbage for needed summer crops. I would be depending on the traveling cart or skull cavern to acquire these missing seeds, and I would need to find more mixed seeds as I only had 9 of the 10 wheat needed in this initial batch. And yes, my farm layout is wishful thinking that I will chance into iridium sprinklers in the desert mines. I picked up an ice cream for Demetrius as they are fairly cheap and I need to get on his good side to see if he'll mail me a nautilus shell before winter. Then I headed to the mines where I reached level 110 for my space boots and level 120 for that all-important skull key. Overnight, I reached level 6 mining, giving me the ability to craft bombs for skull cavern dives. Linus had requested a sweet pea, so I brought him one the next afternoon, then found out Willie doesn't take credit for the work of others, unlike some shopkeepers, as he'd let Linus know I'd been the one to catch his wares. Yet more confirmation that this boycott of Pierre is justified. Next, I finished up the Summer Forage bundle, expanding my crop fields a bit to make room for some summer forage seeds. That night I spent a good deal of time foraging and chopping trees I'd planted in the northern pass. Reaching level 7 foraging and caring for my chickens that day bumped me up to level 3 farming. On the morning of day 31, I got the infamous Shorts letter that I would promptly ignore for the time being. After caring for my crops, I made a trip over to Clint to crack some geo to find more museum donations, now up to 49. I need to work more on the animal bundles, so I requested my first barn built and brought Demetrius his ice cream. What a nice summertime treat. Next, I decided to clear the land up by the spa that was now open to see if there were any mixed seeds along with that lovely fiber. And I made my very first trip to the desert to meet Sandy and unlock the Skull Cavern, dipping my toes in for a few hours that afternoon. I found my first treasure room on floor 28. Come on, tomato seeds? Oh, an auto petter? That's pretty sweet. I hung out at the mines until midnight when I decided to call it and head to bed for the evening. First thing on day 32, I planted trees outside the Adventurers Guild as wood would be a hot commodity, and this location is really close to the minecart. Then I spent the day in the frozen mines hoping to find my 2 missing dwarf scrolls from the death sprites and blue slimes. But aside from gems and ores, I headed home empty-handed. I hadn't watered that morning, so I made sure the crops had a drink before bedtime, where I dreamt of reaching level 6 combat. The nutty professor sent me 10,000 gold on Friday morning since I had surpassed floor 25 in the Skull Cavern mines a couple days ago, so I took my hard-fought money over to see what the traveling cart had in stock today. I debated picking up another poppy seed, but decided against it as I already had a good deal of crops needing watering back home. I wanted to make easier progress in Skull Cavern, so I asked Clint to upgrade my pickaxe to gold, picked up a quest to bring Demetrius a hot pepper, and had a little heart-to-heart with Willie before fishing off the pier well into the evening. With my dock chest now full, I grabbed some essentials from the chest to haul back home, then took a summer foray into the secret woods for fiddlehead ferns and a little fishing, but took the hint and skedaddled after catching a second wall basket. On day 34, my first summer storm was on the horizon, but I wouldn't be able to upgrade my watering can today as Clint was still working on my pickaxe. Luckily, Robin was done working on the barn, so I would be able to have her start on a fish pond while I was in the area to give Demetrius the pepper he requested. Go for this, go for that. I spent the afternoon catching mountain summerfish, taking a quick break to donate a few bones to Gunther, picking up the pumpkin seeds I'd need the following season. Since my barn was ready, I picked up a cow named Soy before crafting rods to protect my crops from lightning strikes tomorrow. I had all the lake fish now, so I finished up that bundle at the community center, then did what was becoming my habitual nighttime watering routine. Sunday morning, I was on the rainy day fishing grind, even moving over to the eastern pier to see if I could hook the legendary fish of the season. They put up a heck of a fight, but eventually I was victorious and crossed the crimson fish off my fishing list. Later that night, I realized I hadn't stopped by the traveling merchant, so I headed over only to find a well of disappointment. I placed my order for a tomato seed, so let's see if she comes through next week. Fishing today had provided the final ocean fish needed for the bundle, so I turned them in for some beach warp totems, then ran about collecting wood the rest of the evening. Day 36, my gold pickaxe was ready and the spirits were in good spirits. My fish pond was also completed, so I tossed in an octopus before crafting a beehive to place next to my solitary poppy. I picked up my pickaxe from Clint and then sent him back to work upgrading my axe to gold as well. Next, I took a trip to level 100 in the mines to replenish myself with some star drop energy and made my way to the desert. For another day of diving. This lack of backpack space is making Skull Caverns a special kind of challenge, but my main goal is to collect items to help future runs, like iridium ore and buffing foods. I left the cave after only reaching level 24, leaving goodies I found for next time in a chest by the entrance before heading home for the night and reaching level 7 mining. Emily sniffed out the cloth I'd attained from a serpent the next morning, and my first batch of summer forage was ready to harvest. I was too low on funds for another desert trip, and I still needed the last 2 dwarf scrolls, so I headed back to the frozen levels of the regular mine that afternoon, switching over to fiber farming that evening when the scrolls just refused to drop. I've also not found an ancient seed, so floors filled with grubs were bonus. Overnight, I sold enough tea saplings to refill my coffers, for a little anyhow. The morning of day 38, both Lewis and the telly reminded me the luau was tomorrow, and I had just the item as I'd saved a gold quality cauliflower for the occasion. After picking up my axe, I had Clint open some geodes for old time's sake, then brought Maru a fresh battery pack for her birthday, and placed a second battery in the lockbox to kick off the zany scavenger hunt that would likely span over the next few seasons. That afternoon, I stopped by the desert to pick up a few warp totems and plant down a literal forest of trees for my future wood needs. I also picked up a few starfruit seeds, as these would make for some good farming experience and profits in the coming weeks. The night was young, so I popped into the cavern for a quick dive and lucked into a dino egg from a solitary beast on the 14th floor, and then a rabbit's foot from a serpent the next floor. Don't die before you pick that up. Come on, focus! After some loot arranging, I hightailed it out of there with my unexpected goods in tow, making it home with enough time to plant my new starfruit seeds. There's not much to report on day 39, except that I did some light farm work before heading to the luau to chat with the locals and deposit my collie into the pot, earning the best reaction from the purple people eater. Side note, I had never seen this portrait until I went looking for the governor's name, and now I can't unsee it. You're welcome if you're in the same boat. Tomorrow would be the second storm of the season, so today would be a good time to upgrade my watering can. But before I sort that out, I need to stop by the traveling cart for our game of summer seed roulette. She had a grape starter I decided to pick up for fall, but nothing else really caught my eye, so I was off to the museum to turn in a couple more donations. Clint found us a new artifact in a trove, and then got to work on our watering can. Later that afternoon, I found a rainbow shell on the beach that I brought over to the trade platform for the next quest in the chain. Beet seeds are a fall crop sold by Sandy, so I'll be able to continue with this quest line in the next season. But for tonight, I wanted to work on more fishing bundles, so I hung out in the secret woods until I finally caught myself a wood skip for the specialty bundle. Overnight, I hit level 4 farming, finally unlocking preserve jars, and level 9 fishing. It was a rainy, good luck kind of day, but on my way to a chest, I accidentally picked one of my precious melons, then thanked the lucky spirits that it was the gold quality crop I needed it to be. So I jetted on off to the desert with my luck in tow for a light day of cave diving. And when I say light, I mean I stayed there all day. I reached my first treasure room on floor 11 and picked up a pomegranate sapling. Wish it was apple, but I'll take it. I jumped down a shaft 13 floors to my next treasure on floor 39. And they were summer seeds, but not the tomatoes I was looking for. Floor 44 held my next treasure room, and it was another auto petter? Honestly, what in the world is going on? On floor 50, I did receive one seed I needed when a friendly serpent dropped a red cabbage seed. And while I was descending floors fairly quickly, given my golden axe, my Yeti tooth sword was not quite cutting it, so I bailed out when I hit an infested floor 56. I am not interested in losing any of my precious loot from this run. I decided to save the pomegranate sapling for the greenhouse or Ginger Island, and placed my second auto petter in the barn to keep Soy company. Just before bed, I set out a few jars that I stuffed with cauliflower before nodding off for the night and reaching level 7 combat and level 8 mining. News of another storm and very happy spirits greeted me on the telly day 42. Instead of day resetting to find gold quality melons this season, I would be intentionally filling up my pack and checking the crops with a gold melon already in my inventory. This way, I will only be able to pick up another gold quality melon and can leave the rest to check on another day. None today, which is surprising due to the good luck, but maybe the traveling merchant has better news for us. Survey says, no tomato today, oy vey. So I had grown up, so I grabbed a milk pail from Marnie, then spent some time river fishing in hopes of catching the elusive Dorado. No luck on the Dorado, but there were loads of forageables on the beach like this rainbow shell I saved from being trampled on by Haley. I picked up my steel watering can from Clint before making my way home for some afternoon farm chores. I checked in on the monster eradication goals that evening and saw I was making okay progress on most mobs, but the run was still young. My night was spent fiber farming and hoeing the dirt in search of scrolls in the mines. A good humor rainy morning greeted me on day 43. So after I did my daily gold melon check and processed a few geodes with Clint, I made my way to the desert for a mid-morning dive in the mines. There was a dino infestation on floor 27 that I took care of, acquiring 2 lovely dinosaur eggs, and finding a treasure on the very next floor. Come on, tomato seeds? Nope. A serpent on the next floor let me know I had overstayed my welcome, so I headed home to clear out a bit more of the farm before bedtime. There were no gold melons on the morning of day 44, so I consoled myself by harvesting my summer forage crops and replanting them to keep up my supplies for tea sapling production. I still needed to unlock the sewer to meet Krobus, so I had Clint open a few Omni Geodes, but there were no new gems in the batch for museum donation. So I went back to the mines to continue the grind for the 2 missing dwarf scrolls. Dwarf scroll number 3 was dropped by a slime on infested floor 54, and another scroll dropped the very next floor, but it was one I already donated. I decided to reset the mines and head back to the infested floor for more slimes, but on the way, had the missing scroll drop from a happy little dust sprite. Despite being a bad luck day, the second gold melon was ready that next morning, and I had a date with Gunther to donate the final dwarf scrolls for the Dwarfish Translation Guide, simultaneously putting us at 61 items donated, so we effectively gained access to 2 new friends in one go. Today seemed a good day to catch the elusive Dorado, so I spent the afternoon fishing in the river until my goal was complete, and then I fished a bit more. That night, I reached level 8 foraging as I'd done a bit of tree felling between the fishing rounds. Gunther brought over the key to one of my run goals the morning of summer 18, and I picked my 3rd golden melon, only 2 to go. Later that morning, I stopped in to see Robin, but clearly forgot that today was her doctor appointment, so I headed to the desert and picked up a couple deluxe speed grow. I was still hoping for tomato seeds, and the deluxe speed grow would allow me until Saturday to plant them in order to harvest 1 before summer ends. While in the desert, I took the opportunity to fish up the sandfish needed for this specialty fish bundle before heading back to town to meet the wondrous Krobus and buy his inventory of mixed seeds. I couldn't remember when Robin would be back from her appointment, so I headed to her house shortly before 4 and waited. And waited. Robin wandered in an hour later and was kind enough to take my coop upgrade order. Then I hit the mines for the final specialty fish needed for the bundle. I feel bad about littering by the water, but small backpack woes. On my way home that night, I turned in the specialty fish bundle for a few dish of the sea. The next morning, I made a few more lightning rods as another storm was on the horizon. Then it was the day of reckoning. Would the traveling merchant offer me the tomato seeds? Nope. But I did pick up a lucky lunch, as I still had a chance to luck into the seeds on a treasure floor in Skull Cavern. And since it would be raining tomorrow, I decided I'd wait until then and do a full day dive in the hopes of lucking into one such chest. I decided to plant the radish seeds I'd found in a previous dive before it became too late in the season, brought Leah the super cucumber she requested, and handed Demetrius an ice cream cone for his birthday. On a side note, I am on track to catch every available fish in year 1, provided I can reach Ginger Island in time. I had yet to find an ancient seed, so I spent the evening in the regular mines killing grubs and collecting fiber. And so, we've come to the final day that finding tomato seeds would be viable for summer crop bundle completion. And although it was a bad luck day, I gave Tia a pat before jetting off to the desert. The serpents wanted my lunch, but luckily I downed the hatchet before they could reach me. My first treasure of the day came on floor 31, and while they weren't iridium, I won't raise my nose at free sprinklers much. A serpent heard I needed more luck, so he dropped me a rabbit's foot on floor 68. And I had the opportunity to find out if it worked 2 floors later, as I found a treasure chest filled with life elixirs. They're life elixirs. Unfazed, I uncovered my very first prismatic shard in an iridium node, then promptly dropped into a prehistoric infestation. Yeah, this is my stop. No tomato seeds today, but we're not going home empty-handed as, dun dun dun, we now have a galaxy sword. Back home, I found Demetrius had sent me a couple letters, and Robin let me know I could now incubate eggs. I'd set a salmon berry to jelly for the artisan bundle, and since that was done, I had all the items needed to complete that bundle, rewarding us with our very first keg. Just before heading to bed, I tossed in the refined quartz requested by the octopus. What a busy and productive day, quoth the level 8 combattee. Day 49, I learned the recipe to make maki rolls, an item needed for the chef's bundle. Though to make it, I would need to upgrade my house, placing that on my Robin to-do list along with barn upgrades for truffle-loving piggies. One more melon was ready for plucking. I tossed a dino egg into the coop for incubation, and it was Sunday, so that meant a trip to the traveling cart. And while time was up for the tomato seeds, if she brought me the tomato itself, we would be A-okay. But she didn't. My next stop was Marnie's for a duck named Luna, then Krobus to gift him a horseradish, and finally Clint to upgrade my trash can to copper. I know, finally. Minutes before she closed, I hopped in to see Robin about that house upgrade I'd need, before continuing on to the mines to test out my new galaxy sword on the mobs and fiber found there. I ended up hitting level 5 farming and selected the tiller profession overnight. Soy graced me with a large milk for the animal bundle on day 50. And as it was his birthday, I brought the dwarf a topaz before heading to the mines for more floor farming well into the evening, allowing me to reach level 9 mining. None of the 4 melons left were the final gold quality I needed that next morning, but my starfruit were ready, and I could grab the final wheat needed for the fodder bundle. Then I spent some time restocking my wood stores in the southern forest. That afternoon, I thought I might upgrade my pickaxe to iridium quality, but failed to notice I was a little low on funds, so that would have to wait for another day. I raced home to grab some iron bars, hoping to upgrade my trash can instead, but barely missed Clint locking up at exactly 4. And I thought we were friends this run, Clinterino. That night, I continued tree chopping as I would need a lot of wood for various projects. And on a whim, I decided to pick up a void egg from Krobus to hatch once our incubator was available. Void eggs are a loved gift for Krobus, so once I have a chicken laying them, I will never be short on gifts for my intended. Overnight, Robin completed my house upgrade, so I rose the next morning to a decidedly bigger abode. First thing on day 52, I picked my remaining melons, one of which was the final gold quality needed for the community center. As today was Willie's birthday, I fished up an octopus from the pond to bring him, but not before stopping in to see Clint for that pickaxe upgrade. Next, I headed in to gift Willie his loved birthday gift and rearrange the ocean crab pots. Haley asked for a scorpion carp, so I brought one to her that evening, then stopped by the Hat Mouse for my customary hair clip. There, that's better. The rest of the night was spent rearranging my house and heading back to the mines for more fiber farming. My radishes were ready for harvest on the final Thursday in summer, and after bringing George a hot pepper for his knee, I went hunting for Demetrius to bring him his research melon. And I still gave it to him, even after he made a jab at me about my missing tomato crop. A metalhead felt pity on me and dropped a squire's helm in the mines that night, so now I was really ready for whatever fiber the floors threw at me, and monsters too. Heading home that night, I mistakenly talked to Clint, and he told me all the business I'd be giving him just wasn't good enough. And my final stop of the evening was to check in with Krobus and purchase the mixed seeds I'd need in the following season. I reached level 6 farming that night, so a cheese press was finally in my future. I picked my first gold corn on the last Friday in summer, and am really glad this crop continues growing in fall, or I would be relying on pumpkins for the quality crops bundle. Clint had finished with my iridium pickaxe, and I sent him immediately back to work upgrading my trash can. Then asked Robin to upgrade the barn, and checked the lack of wares at the traveling cart before jetting off to the desert to take advantage of the good luck day. Once at the desert, I got a little distracted attempting to refill my wood reserves, but got back on track and headed into the cavern shortly before 7 for a relatively fruitless dive. Linus sent me a catfish in the mail the next morning, and my very first bottle of starfruit wine was ready, but this one would not be heading to the community center. Instead, I plopped a salmonberry into the keg as a cheaper bottle would hold the bundle spot of honor. Before heading back over to Skull Cavern that day, I picked up my squire's helmet to make sure I was properly equipped for a long day of diving. A serpent clutching a rabbit's foot greeted me on floor 4, and a few mummies offered me their cloth and candy on floor 44. But surprisingly, I hit no treasure rooms that entire day of diving. It's the final day of summer, so I made sure to pluck my poppy before it perished the next day. I stopped by the traveling cart, still hoping for a tomato to complete the summer crops bundle in summer, but it was a no. That blueberry taunt though. I'd left my helm in the desert, but still wanted to gather more fiber in the mines today, even without my armorly adornment. I was reminded to head to the beach in the midst of a dive, so I made my way over to chat with the locals before relaxing with the mystical jellies as they illuminated the season's end. That night, I shipped 32 final summer tea saplings, finishing the summer out in relatively good spirits, despite never chancing upon the tomato we so desperately need. My latest dream started off so normal. There was this large cave, and as I entered, I was greeted by serpents and ghosts. So I tried to escape by jumping down a hole. But then there were only holes, and I continued to fall, hole after hole, deep into the darkness. No treasure, no loot, only the fall. I woke up on Boycott Farm, still hoping to reach my 3 main goals of completing the community center, rooming with Krobus, and earning 1 million gold by the end of the year, all while boycotting the services of both Pierre and Joja Mart. Fall started off with great news as it would be raining tomorrow. But for today, I need to clear my farm of the crops that didn't survive the change of season. Bye bye coffee plants. The final gold corn was ready, so I have all the crops needed for the quality bundle. I also have all the gold needed for my latest farm upgrade. Hello, deluxe barn. Here's hoping I can scrounge up the money for a pig soon. I stopped to chat with Demetrius, hinting that I could really use a certain winter shell if he had a spare. I planted 1 pumpkin with deluxe speed grow so that it would be ready for the community center around the same time as the yam. Then got to work sowing the stock of mixed seeds I've saved up for fall. Late that night, I remembered my rare seeds and plopped them into the ground with the others, and found my first hazelnut of the season on a last-minute bus stop inspection. After some quick farm chores, I headed to the community center with my fall forageables in tow, only to find Robin wielding her hammer in the middle of a rainstorm. Here's hoping there's no lightning today. That distraction aside, I made my donation to the community center and picked up my 30 fall seeds. Then picked up a request from Sandy for a purple mushroom. I actually need to visit the desert for beet seeds, so this quest was kismet. Next, I checked the special orders board and picked up the fishing request left by Demetrius to catch 10 albacore, since I wanted to fish today for profits anyhow. And there was no way I could ship 100 cranberries this season without breaking my Pierre boycott. As it was Penny's birthday, I grabbed an emerald to gift her, then thought I might gift her a tomka soup instead. Soup seems like a great meal choice on this rainy fall day, but before I brought it to her, I wanted to do a little river fishing for the 2 remaining fish for the community center, the tiger trout and walleye. A shad I caught insisted that Penny would prefer an emerald or 4 for her birthday, so I obliged and gifted her the gem in place of a yummy meal. I spent the rest of the evening fishing up the tiger trout and walleye for the final fish tank bundles, then turned them all in for full fish tank completion, and also completed the quality crops bundle for an additional preserve jar. Ignore that summer crops bundle still open. Say goodbye to Linus's boulder buddy as he rolls his way on to new waters and streams. Demetrius must have been paying attention to our chats as he sent me the nautilus shell on day 59. Heck yeah. Now if only Linus would send me a maki roll. You see, Back when I upgraded my house, I realized I made a grave error by not planting rice in spring, since that meant I have no way of making maki rolls myself without buying rice from Pierre. Because of this, I have been checking in with Gus daily and Krobus on dish days to see if they have them in stock for the chef bundle. Fingers crossed that either of them or Linus pulls through for us. With the shell now in my possession, I completed the field research bundle for a bonus recycling machine, before hopping on over to the desert to give Sandy her mushroom, and purchase a decent quantity of beet seeds to plant back on the farm later that afternoon. I spent the rest of the day fishing at the ocean and managed to catch 5 of the 10 albacore requested by Demetrius before calling it for the night, scoring some pretty decent fish profits for the day. My barn upgrade was finished and I was a sneeze away from the money needed for my first pig. Based on my profits from yesterday, I figured I would have time to fish up enough to sell to Willie in time to reach Marnie before she closed to purchase Soy's barn companion. And it was so close by also using the forage from my dock chest. Thankfully, a tilapia put us over the edge before 2, and I picked up our new piggy pumpkin with time to spare. This meant I only had the funds to buy 4 of Krobus's mixed seeds, but some is better than none at this point. I still had a fishing buff, so I tried catching mutant carp, but after only managing seaweed and a regular carp, I lost interest, and headed back to the dock to try for the remaining albacore while Willie rooted me on. Day 61, my dino egg finally hatched, so I named our new friend Green, and set a void egg to incubate in its place. Then it was time to see if the traveling cart was feeling helpful this season. She had a duck feather that I needed, and even though I knew my duck would drop one as soon as I bought it, I got it anyways, just in case. Today's Elliot's birthday, and I was planning to give him the tomka soup I didn't end up gifting Penny the other day when he visits the saloon later that evening. And wouldn't you know, Gus has me covered if I end up forgetting the soup tonight. What a pal. Leave a like if you agree that Gus is the unsung hero of Pelican Town. With my purchased duck feather and lucky lettuce, I completed the dye bundle for an all-important seed maker, then checked in with Willie about gold in them there hills. While carting mine chest overflow back to the farm, I noticed my salmonberry wine finished brewing, and that meant another trip to the community center to finish up the Enchanter's bundle. Only the fodder and chef's bundle to go for the bulletin board. That night I did remember the soup for Elliot, so I brought it to him on my way to the mines as I was in serious need of fiber. As I drifted off to sleep that evening, I reached level 9 foraging from some tree chopping efforts that day. As anticipated, there was a feather waiting for me on the morning of day 62, but you might say he was a day late and a duck short. I was still missing an item for the animal bundle, so I decided to pick up a goat named Juniper for milk and goat cheese. I would eventually get a rabbit or 2, but funds were not yet available for the coop upgrade needed. Krobus' dish of the week was hash browns when I visited him today, and Gus was stocked with red plates. I should really purchase a phone to check in with Gus daily, but for now he's on my Krobus and trash can route, so it'd be nice but not necessary. That night it was back to the mines for more fiber and hoeing in the frozen floors, hoping that it might drop snow yams, a possibility I'd heard but don't recall ever seeing in my playthroughs. I'd picked up a quest from Clint to examine copper ore, so I intercepted him on his way home for my finder's fee. Day 63, I found Soy caring for her new little friends in their enormous barn, then headed for my customary Sunday check of the traveling cart, but she had nothing for me today. Later that day, Willie requested I catch more albacore, and Gus was selling leftover red plates? Come on Gus, at least discount them or something. I wasn't sure when I might need them, so I ran over to the desert to trade in jade for staircases, then chopped down and replanted a good quantity of trees I'd left growing in the desert. I did so much chopping that I had over a stack of wood when I got back home. Here's hoping I don't get Robin's resource rush when the special orders reset tomorrow. Whoops. I had one more task left that night, and that was fishing off the bridge in hopes of catching either the midnight carp or the angler. Shortly before 1 AM, I had the angler in my pack and was heading back home, managing to reach level 7 farming overnight. It's the 8th of fall. That means the start of blackberry season. And Linus requested I find his berry basket. Will do, Linus, for the low cost of a maki roll. The bats brought me more fruit today, but I still need 2 apples for the fodder bundle. That morning, I remembered to pick up my trash can from Clint and had him work on more geodes to help with museum donations. Bag space meant I had to run back and forth between buildings a few times, but I ended the trip with 68 total items donated. Next, I grabbed Linus's basket from by the tunnel and brought it to him so he could join me in collecting berries over the next few days. While in the area, I picked up the telephone from Robin along with a few other crafting recipes before heading to the ocean to catch the 3 albacore for Willie's quest. I caught the last one right before Willie headed in and was able to turn in the quest just in time. The saloon was serving stuffing, but I was full up on blackberries, so I decided to pass on supper and instead brought Krobus a diamond as I needed to get to work on our heart situation, and it would be a while still before we had a steady supply of void eggs for gifting. The next morning, I plopped down the phone and made a quick call to Gus at 6:10 in the morning. This is actually the first time I've used the phone in-game, but it's really neat that you can see the dish for the day without waiting until the saloon is open. Linus sent me the recipe for sashimi, and Lewis let me know that the fair was coming to town next week. I'll need to remember to save up items for display. Rain was on the horizon, so I grabbed a few gold bars and brought Clint my watering can to upgrade before stuffing the beets into Lewis's fridge and receiving the final task needed before the casino would be available. Pam was making sardine calzones, and I think I have one in a chest somewhere, so I picked up that quest, then got to work on another quest hunting for the prismatic slime, while in the mines doing more fiber farming for the rest of the night. I made another early morning call to Gus on day 66, and while I won't be mentioning the call moving forward unless he's serving maki rolls, rest assured I will be checking in with the saloon daily. My Speed Grow pumpkin was ready, but it'd be another day for the yam, so I placed the pumpkin in the chest with the other fall crops. Yeah, don't get me started on those summer crops. I brought Krobus his second diamond of the week, then headed to the mines to seek out the jelly for Mr. Wizard. I wasn't having much luck in the lower levels, so I popped back up to the frozen floors, and there he was, the lovely glowy slime in all his prismatic goodness. He dropped his jelly, and I was ecstatic that the quest hadn't taken me the entire 7 days like I thought it might. I headed to the saloon to bring Pam the sardine she requested and was interrupted by Elliot. With that fishy situation out of the way, I made my way over to the wizard's tower with a jelly in tow, but got so distracted by picking blackberries that I just barely missed him locking up for the night. I'm annoyed, but mostly with myself. At least my slime hunting allowed me to reach level 9 combat. On day 67, my yam was ready, and we had a new ebony chick named Ginger join the flock. I headed over to give Razzle Dazzle his jelly for a lovely 5,000 gold reward, picked up my watering can from Clint, then used my newly expanded wallet to give the coop its final upgrade. I had a quest to slay 5 red slimes and made sure to take care of that and reach Lewis for the turn-in before it got too late. Krobus had a new batch of mixed seeds, so I grabbed them during our daily chat, then headed back to the mines for the night to farm the one resource I never seem to have enough of. Fiber. It's fiber. Rasmodius sent us the monster musk recipe the next morning, and I had plans to put it in use as soon as possible. Also, look at the cutie Junimo on his stationery. I got a random call from Lewis. Guess it was nice he was checking in on me. And there were still no apples in the Batcave. Maybe the traveling merchant has better news for me on this lovely Friday. Nope, she has nothing I need to finish up the community center. But I decided to snag a spangle seed. Honestly, it was probably a waste of money, but I can pretty up the house if I manage to unlock the garden pot in time. While checking in with Krobus, I debated selling some gems to Clint to afford the iridium sprinkler, but decided just to have some geodes opened, and made my donations to the ever-growing museum collection. Then went to the mines to see about farming enough bat wings for my first batch of monster musk. I made a quick check of the eradication goals and saw I had almost half the dust sprites needed, so I continued on, lucking into a bat swarm late in the evening. Back home that night, I made my first monster musk that would be useful in quickly upping my dust sprite kills in the coming days. On day 69, my starfruit wine was ready, so I set it aside with a few other items I'd be using in the Grange display. Then did my daily farm chores before stopping to see what Krobus had in stock today. He had candy at a steal, so I picked up a few and munched on one before dousing myself in the pungent perfume for a full day of monster slaying. I was debating heading home around midnight, but ended up on an infested floor 58 where I stayed far too late, causing me to pass out while desperately trying to reach my farm before 2. I know I said I wouldn't mention my morning call, but I just found it fishy that both the Queen of Sauce and Gus were pushing trout soup today. Is that typical? Pumpkin was happy and fully grown this morning, so I went to clear out a little space for her truffle-seeking endeavors and discovered she didn't need my help after all. The luck continued as Ginger laid her first void egg today as well. On my way to bring the void egg to Krobus, I stopped by the traveling cart for my bi-weekly betrayal. Honestly, a radish but no tomato? Why do you do this to me? Anyhow, Krobus loved the fresh egg, and we were now officially at 2 hearts. I decided to turn my fall crops in for the bundle, really wishing I'd get the final 2 items needed for the pantry before winter. Then it was back to the mines to work more on sprite eradication. In the sleepy hours of night, I again chanced upon an infested floor, but tonight I made it home with plenty of time to reach my bed. Oh, and I can finally make kegs as I am now a level 8 farmer. Day 71, I changed up my preserve jar layout to clear up some space in the kitchen, picked up Clint's Cave Patrol quest on the special orders board, and headed over to gift Krobus another void egg before heading to the mines to start patrolling the cave. This quest will put me over the eradication goal for bats, and since I need 70 more dust sprites, I decided the frozen floors would be best for my bat hunting endeavors, and while there, got a lucky prismatic shard drop. This will be a perfect addition for my Grange display tomorrow. Around 1 AM, I slayed the final dust sprite needed for the eradication goal, but it was too late in the evening to stop by the Adventurers Guild, so my reward would have to wait for another day. I added the shard to my goodies chest when I got back home that night. 6 items so far, but I should be able to add another 3 relatively easy in the morning. The day of the fair has arrived, and although Gus has closed down the saloon, I am able to grab one of his amazing survival burgers while catching up with some of my neighbors at the fairgrounds. Then, while waiting for Lewis to judge the Grange displays, I tested my strength and managed to earn a bonus token. Alright Lewis, let's get a move on. I don't know why I'm so nervous. Thank goodness, I won first place and am halfway to the tokens needed for that magical star drop. I played the fishing minigame to build up the rest of the tokens needed to reach 2,000, then headed to the vendor for my star drop prize. There were a few other items I kind of wanted, so I hopped on the wheel until I had enough tokens for the rare crow, fedora, and dried sunflowers. No more bag space even if I wanted to buy any of the other prizes. Before heading to bed, I finished up the watering I'd neglected and collected a bit of hardwood I might need later in the run. That night, Pumpkin gave birth, saving me so much money on a second piggy, and I named her baby Spice. Look at this mommy teaching her baby about truffles. It was afternoon before I finished up on the farm and headed to the desert to work on the scavenger quest. Then I set to work harvesting the trees I'd planted there, replanting as many spots as possible with pine trees late into the evening. I returned to the valley early enough that night to pick up my burglar's ring from Gil. This may be the earliest I've ever completed that goal. The rest of the night was spent fiber and monster farming in the lower levels of the mine. Day 74, I found Soy playing hide and seek with me behind the barn, and I decided to craft a glowstone ring to accompany my burglar's ring in my loadout so that I wouldn't have to choose between illumination and magnetism. I was reminded to check the lumber pile beside my house, and yet I had foolishly blocked it with a particularly full chest, so I set to work moving everything out, taking the opportunity to redo my chest organization a touch. The path was finally clear a few hours later, and I was able to snag the club card that would allow access to the back room casino at the desert. It was Marnie's birthday, so I figured I'd buy a rabbit while gifting her, but she was not there. Apparently Marnie heads for a checkup every year on her birthday, which is inconvenient for me, but I suppose is a great way to make sure you never forget your appointment. Next, I made my way to Clint's for geode assistance and a quick trash can upgrade. My Grange-winning prismatic shard was placed in a spot of honor at the museum. Then it was back to the mines the rest of the day to finish up my cave patrolling. Marnie dropped by for a friendly visit the next morning, and Caroline requested a pumpkin for Abigail. I think I have a few of those lying around still. I got my first star quality void egg and was pretty happy as higher quality would allow for quicker friendship gains with Krobus in the coming weeks. And the animal icing on the cake? Juniper gave me the large goat milk I needed to finish the animal bundle. With a nearly full pack for today's errands, I took a quick stop by the traveling cart, but it was the same old disappointing song.
You just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
After literally dropping the cave carrot off with Marnie, I picked up a rabbit named Barry. I've been trying to name animals based on teas I've been drinking, and the tea of the day is elderberry. Next, I went hunting for Caroline and stumbled into a cutscene I had somehow not seen until the middle of fall. I quickly skipped the cutscene and Caroline met me at the door for the pumpkin, and then on to the pantry for my cheese press reward. I'm a bit sad that I could be unlocking the greenhouse if I'd only abandoned my principles and just bought one seed. But no, I must not think like that. The merchant will come through for me. I just have to stay strong. With the tasks I set out to do now completed, I headed back to the mines for tea sapling materials, as I have a lot of projects needing funding over the coming weeks. Before it got too late, I remembered to check in with Krobus, but decided against forking over 10k for a sprinkler today, and spending most of the day in the mines allowed us to reach level 10 mining. I chose Prospector as I don't tend to sell bars too often, and coal is an extremely useful resource. My trash can was ready on the morning of day 76, and I had plenty of iridium bars, so after picking up my can from Clint, I placed my request for a shiny new iridium axe. Later, I stopped by to chat with Krobus and see his Saturday meal deal, and meal deal it was. $180 for a spicy eel is a bit over half the cost from the saloon. I'll take all 5, thank you. I didn't have much more I wanted to do today, so I did my usual fiber farming in the mines until the sleepy hours were upon me. The next morning, there was a gold quality void egg waiting for me in the coop. Perfect timing as the gifting week had reset today. But before I visited Krobus, I checked in with everyone's favorite vixen who tempts you in with her waves and wares. But in the end, there's nothing. Krobus got his golden void egg, and I found out George's eyesight is better than mine because I did not even see him there. I promised Demetrius an eggplant that I may or may not bring to him, and later headed to the desert to unlock the casino for the first time. I considered gambling a bit, but felt particularly hapless, so decided to punish myself with a trip to the cavern. I was a little beat up and only made it to floor 12 before heading home, feeling that my time would be better spent fiber farming in the regular mines due to my limited inventory space. This morning, I decided to check on profession progress and was rather pleased with my levels so far, though I don't think I'll be reaching level 10 farming in time for winter. Speaking of winter, I want to have a fish pond ready once sturgeon are available next season, so I commissioned one built, then picked up the rock rejuvenation special order for an easy breezy beautiful quest. Krobus got another void egg in exchange for an adorable smile, and Clint had finished my final axe upgrade, Trees Beware. He also opened a few geodes for me, so now we are up to 76 items in the museum. That afternoon, I caught Emily on her way to work and had to practically jog to keep up while I handed the gems over. The rest of the night, I spent hanging out in the mines for that all-important fiber. My octopus were in the mood for a nice cup of tea, so I tossed one in before getting started on my daily farm chores. I was just finishing up watering when a train passed through, so I thought I'd run up and take a look. And wouldn't you know, this Joja train dropped absolutely nothing. It's fine. I don't want anything from Joja anyhow. After a lovely dip in the spa, I took a tour through the secret woods for some extra hardwood, followed by a lap around Cindersnap for regular wood for the rest of the night. My final forage crops of fall were ready on this last Wednesday, so after plucking them in the gently falling rain, I brought George a piece of spring forage I'd saved for his birthday, then grabbed a snail and periwinkle from my river crab pots. Those were the final fish I need to catch for this area, so the pots will find a new home in the ocean while I keep trying for the lobster and crab. But first, to the blacksmith for my golden hoe, and then on to the ocean to drop my pots before parking myself in town for some lucrative rainy day river fish by day and feisty rainy day ocean fish by night. All the fishing paid off today, as this was now my first level 10 profession. The awkwardly tall gemberry plants were ready the next morning, and I knew a secret woods dweller who would love to trade a taste. I caught a lobster, so only the crab from the crab pots to go. Oh, the irony. Then it was back to the fishing grind. Just before bed, I tossed a midnight carp into the empty fish pond, then dreamed sweet profits of shipment dreams. With it being the final fall Friday, I took my traditional trip to the traveling cart. No tomato yet again, but I did pick up the winter rare crow for a slight bargain price. The star drop from yesterday was so delicious that I thought I'd purchase one from Krobus today, before bringing a refined quartz to the wizard. That night, I spent time hunting bugs in the mines, as I had yet to find an ancient seed. My dive last night was fruitless, so I upped the ante on day 83 with the use of monster musk in the mines. I killed many a bug that day, but still no seed. That night, I joined in on the festivities in town, being sure to traverse the maze to reach the golden pumpkin prize at the end. After the festival, I headed to see my pal Krobus, but he already had company of the Anki dwarfish kind. My last-minute pumpkin harvest that morning allowed me to reach level 9 farming overnight. Iridium sprinklers, just in time for winter. I also hit level 10 combat, becoming a brute. On the last day of the season, I harvested corn and tea for the final time this year and discovered a new friend named Elder in the coop. Then it was time to see what disappointment the traveling cart had in store for me. I did pick up a red cabbage seed to grow for shipments, bought a few heaters for my animal friends, and gave Krobus a void egg for the reset of the gifting week. Later that afternoon, I had Clint open a few geodes and donated new gems to the museum, but you know the drill. I had picked up a quest from Willie to catch a few sardines, so I spent the evening fishing in the ocean until that quest was complete, and spent the rest of the night doing more fishing with the hopes of catching any fish that would become unavailable in the coming winter. We finished out fall as a level 10 forager, selecting the botanist profession to aid in bag space containment. I never realized how cold a dream could feel, but everything around me felt so empty and frigid and blindingly bright. The shadow had returned, only this time I could feel a heat emanating from it. So I followed, through the farm, through the town, until I finally caught up and was engulfed in a warm embrace. Maybe it was because of my dream, but on this first day of winter, I remembered to head to the bus stop for my customary winter meet and greet with the friendly shadow guy. It was Monday, and I lucked into the community center cleanup request on the special orders board. The reward if I complete this quest will come in very handy for tea sapling production. Since my extra pond was now occupied by midnight carp, I need Robin to build another to hold sturgeon for eventual caviar production. I was hoping to work on my relationship with the wizard, so I brought him a mushroom, and it was Krobus' birthday, so I brought him the gold quality void egg I'd saved for the occasion, bumping us up to 7 hearts. That afternoon, we got our missing crab from the ocean and turned in the final foraging bundle, fully completing the crafts room and leaving only the pantry and bulletin board for community center completion. Once back on the farm, I crafted a couple iridium sprinklers and planted down my winter forage seeds, then spent the night fishing up newly available winter fish to work on my collection, and did a little dance with the Junimos as they magicked the bridge back together. Willie gave me a squiddy fishing challenge the next morning, and I still needed to fish up trash in town for Linus, so the main task of the day is fishing. I figured I'd work on fish I was still missing for the collection, so I started out in the sewers, where I caught the mutant carp, then to the forest to not catch the glacier fish, and later made my way to the ocean for some evening squid fishing. Willie was just leaving the saloon when I was heading home, so I made sure to hand over the squid. Wednesday morning was more of the same, though this time I headed to the mines to fish up the ice pip, then attempted to find the elusive lava eel. And while the eel did, in fact, elude me, I collected enough trash to toss it into the bin at the train station. Time was running out for the year, and I came to the conclusion that completing the community center was not in the cards for year 1, so I set my sights on year 2, and reaching perfection? I have to give it a little more thought, but for now, I thought I'd work a bit on shipping one of each item I could to see where we're at year's end. The next morning, I continued shipping random items. Linus sent me the fiber seed recipe for completing his special order, and I made my first batch to plant alongside my winter forage crops for winter tea sapling production. Speaking of Linus, I accidentally caught him taking a polar plunge on my way to grab the golden scythe in the quarry mines. And then it was on to the desert mines for the evening in search of Omni Geodes, and to slay some ghosts per a request from the wizard. That night, Krobus asked me a pretty uncomfortable question, so I just bought my seeds and got out of there as quickly as possible. My midnight carp were hankering for a bug snack the morning of day 89, and after tossing them into the pond, I headed to the mountain lake for some morning fishing and caught a sturgeon to occupy my latest pond. Just before noon, I stopped to see Krobus and purchased the recipes he had. Then it was on to the traveling cart, where I picked up a few wild horseradish. I had a few new donations for Gunther, and later that night I planted a second patch of fiber seeds on my southern farm. Saturday morning, Clint asked me to gift Emily for him, and we'd become cordial enough this run that I wasn't even annoyed he didn't actually send me the amethyst. I did my weekly Maki check with Krobus, and he had a few Dish of the Sea I couldn't pass up. Then I jetted off to the desert for a day-long dive in the mines. I didn't reach any treasure floors, but found a prismatic shard on floor 53, and staircased my way to floor 100 only 20 minutes before pass-out time. Glug glug, yummy milk. Somehow, I managed to make it to bed before passing out that night. On day 91, Pierre stopped by, and he didn't seem to notice that I'd been boycotting him all year. I'd picked up a request from Gus for an amethyst, and I still needed to give one to Emily on Clint's behalf, so I made a mental note to bring a few to the saloon later that night. But first, to the cart and general disappointment. What wasn't disappointing was my daily chat with Krobus. We were on 8 hearts, so I'd need to get a move on if I wanted a roommate by end of year. Next, I gifted Caroline a green tea for her birthday as a little thank you for the tea saplings, and got Clint to work opening a good quantity of Omni Geodes for the few gems I was missing. Speaking of missing, I needed to keep trying for the glacier fish if I didn't want to miss out on catching them this year. After a few failed attempts, I was finally victorious. This fish collection is looking pretty good. I found Abigail lurking outside of the wizard's tower, and Razzle Dazzle basically told me he knows she's there and is okay with it. I was hanging out in the mines when I remembered my amethyst delivery, so I raced to the saloon, but it had just closed when I arrived. I was able to hand over the gems to Emily, but had missed out on the friendship and extra coin from Gus. My first batch of winter crops was ready on day 92, and I worked at filling out the shipping collection some more before heading into town for this week's special order requests. Let's just say I was excited to see Robin's resource rush, as I could always use the wood, and the trees I'd planted in the desert should be mostly grown. But first, I had an ice fishing competition to win. And win I did, though I barely had enough bag space to hold my prizes. Before heading to bed that night, I started working on Robin's resource rush by clearing out the trees I'd planted seasons ago in the northern pass. Tuesday morning, my sturgeon had champagne wishes and I had caviar dreams, so I tossed a diamond into the pond before harvesting my second batch of winter forage. Then headed to the desert for a fun-filled day of re-desertation. By 2 p.m., I'd met my wood quota, but still had trees to cut, so I stayed there until evening, even taking some time to replant what I'd cut down and then some. I made it to the saloon in time for Taco Tuesday, and while there, I picked up all the recipes Gus had in stock. I've been making pretty good progress on shipments, and since it looked like we're going into year 2 for the community center, I figured I might as well consider going for perfection too, but that would take a bit more consideration. Robin sent me the stone chest recipe, and I was pretty close to needing 200 Void Essence to purchase the Void Ghost pendant for Krobus, so I headed to the desert and saw I had more than enough. Now I just need us to reach 10 hearts. While here, I decided to hop in for a quick cavern dive. I headed back to the valley in time to bring Sebastian a birthday tear, and while in the area, stopped by to check on my monster eradication goal progress. Then it was to the mines in search of bugs, as I still haven't seen an ancient seed. My first batch of farm fiber was ready on day 95, and I took over that area to make more room for winter forage seeds. Then it was back to Skull Cavern for the day, as I'm still on the Omni Geode gem grind, and coming across secret notes was a bonus. I got another bonus red cabbage seed that was needed for the shipping collection, and made sure to stop in before bedtime to see Krobus and purchase his stock of mixed seeds. Mixed seeds are an important crafting ingredient if I want to keep a good batch of fiber plants going. And since it was Friday, I took my fruitless frolic to see the merchant's wares, then on to the desert, where I found a prehistoric floor to work on the dino slaying goal. Time for a happy hooty winter 13th. This is actually a perfect spot for this little guy. Speaking of spots, I dug up a note spot and got myself the strange doll that I turned into the museum. That's 87 if you're keeping track at home. And then it was back to Skull Cavern for notes and dinos and eggs, oh my! Mail on the morrow reminded me that the night market starts tomorrow, and visiting this festival every night will be extremely important for reaching perfection. But before I get ahead of myself, it's Sunday, so I need to do my cart check to see if a tomato, apple, or maki roll are in stock. To cheer myself up, I brought Krobus his Sunday void egg, and we became best friends. Heck yeah. That means, dun-da-da, to the mines! Oh, and I did make sure to grab the Void Ghost pendant from the desert trader that I offered to Krobus in these sleepy hours. I've never lived with Krobus before, so I'm pretty interested to see how it differs from the typical Stardew marriage. He said he'll be at the farm in a few days, so I guess we'll see. I'm excited. Monday morning means a new special order request, and you know I'm not helping out Pierre, so fishing for Demetrius it is. Next, I had Clint crack a few dozen geodes, but with all that, I had no new items for the museum. I spent my afternoon fishing in the mountain lake, working on the biome balance quest while hoping for relics in treasure chests. I headed to the docks just as the night market opened, and my first stop was to the traveling cart boat for a bonus chance at disappointment. Then on to the most important boat at the market if I have any hope of reaching perfection without too much Pierre interference. I'd been selling enough tea saplings over the past few days to ensure I had funds to cover all the spring seeds I'd need for the next year. I wanted the option to complete Lewis's crop order, so I made sure to grab extra cauliflower, green beans, and potatoes in case those were among the crops he requested. My final market stop was to the submarine in search of the midnight squid, spookfish with a creepy sunken doll, and last but not least, the blobfish. With my night market fishing completed night 1, I headed down to see what dialogue Krobus had after accepting the pendant, and I have to admit, he's not wrong, but I'm okay with the consequences of my choices. Then I gussied up the farm a bit in anticipation of my new house guest, and yes, I know he'll probably never be outside to see it. We've reached day 100, but far from through, and I've got a lot of organizing to do. Then off to the desert, quick as a pill, to find the strange doll at the top of the hill, and into the cavern till night market time. I'm not really sure why I've made this day rhyme, but I picked up a picture and got all my seeds. Oh, the traveling merchant, she had nothing I need. Back home, placed the mermaid portrait on the wall, and now all that's missing are a few seeds for fall. My house had a fancy new addition the next morning, and that means unlimited Krobus hugs! It wasn't looking like I'd meet any of my other goals for the year, but let's be honest, this was the most important one. The bats got Krobus and I a housewarming gift in the form of the 2 apples I'm missing for the fodder bundle. Heck yeah! I seem to have added the 10 hay to the silo, but luckily it was Wednesday so I could purchase more from Marnie, allowing me to officially complete the fodder bundle for a spare heater. I spent the afternoon at the mountain lake finishing up the quest for Demetrius, and donated the final doll to the museum collection. Then headed to the night market just as it was opening, where I spent a massive 50,000 gold on fall seeds for next year. I couldn't pass up the pretty painting, so I bought it off Lupini, before checking out the mermaid show and earning my prize pearl. I drew Gus as my secret friend for this year's festival, and I couldn't be happier. After taking care of farm chores, I rearranged my chest and had a look at all the seeds I'd picked up for the following year. And since the night market was no longer in town, I headed for Skull Cavern for an afternoon dive, as these dino floors are really helpful for eradication goals. I'd already seen her a few times this week, but I checked with the traveling merchant anyhow for my typical bad news. Then met up with a friendly bear, brought the wizard a void essence, then went home for a satisfying scything session. Sandy needed a diamond, so I delivered, then continued on with monster eradication goals in the desert cave. Just before bed, I reseeded the fiber field as time was running out to earn that cool million in the first year. Saturday the 20th, I took a lap around town for forageables, then found myself back in Skull Cavern killing monsters and taking eggs. Robin requested some hardwood the next day, and I figured 10 pieces wasn't too big an ask. And it was about now I realized I sold my only poppy weeks ago. Yep, keep checking that chest past me. It's not in there. But I can grow another along with that missing tomato. The sturgeon requested a few maple syrup, so I obliged, and then took my obligatory Sunday trudge to the traveling cart.
The woman was too stunned to speak.
Acquiring the tomato means the greenhouse will be open, and that means I can grow the other missing ingredients. To complete the community center, I'll essentially need rice and a poppy. But first, I had some extra coin to spend, and if I'm heading into year 2 this run, I'll be needing some more piggies. I picked up blackberry, mint, chamomile, Earl Grey, English, and lavender. Yeah, I spelled that one wrong. I need cloth to build a mill to process the rice to make the maki roll, but I'm lacking pine tar, so I'll have to get the cloth off mummies in the mines. But first things first, consider that pantry complete. Then onto the mines for the 4 pieces of cloth needed for mill construction. My final stop for the night was to the Statue of Uncertainty, My thought was to reset farming to agriculturalist for the bonus crop growth speed. That, in combination with deluxe speed grow, should allow both the poppy and rice to finish in the greenhouse in time to complete the community center by the end of the year. And while the Junimos did fix up the greenhouse with their special magic overnight, I may have made a slight miscalculation with my profession reset. Wait, what? Oh no. I'm not level 10 farming, am I? Oh shoot. The next morning, I continued on with my plan, crafting a good batch of speed grow that would be used inside the greenhouse. Before I got to planting, I made sure to commission the mill, as Robin would be hard to catch tomorrow if I missed her today. And since it was Monday, I headed to the special order board to pick up a quest from the Razman. After setting up my greenhouse with sprinklers, I planted a poppy and rice in plots coated in deluxe speed grow, then filled the rest of the greenhouse with winter forage seeds, as I had plans for a large tea sapling shipment once my fiber was done. To have time for another batch of forage, I planted wild seeds with a touch of speed grow to help out, then spent my evening in the mines, still looking for that elusive ancient seed, switching over to geode crushing when I bored of killing bugs. I managed to turn in enough gems to receive a magic rock candy as reward, and spent the night in the mines trying to find the ghostie holding onto ectoplasm. Lewis reminded me the Winter Star Feast was tomorrow, so I needed to think about a gift for Gus. It seems my silo is out of hay due to the influx of piglets, so I made sure to stop by Marnie to pick up enough hay for the rest of the season. And since all my crops were covered by sprinklers, I asked Clint for the final watering can upgrade, before bringing Robin the hardwood she requested, then on to the mines where I lucked into the ectoplasmic ghost the wizard was asking for before it got too late. On the day of the winter feast, I gave Krobus a gold quality void egg because, let's be honest, he is my real secret friend. In return, he gave me a star drop? Truly, this is the best gift ever. After some light farm chores, I made my way to the center of town, where I handed a diamond over to my other secret pal, Gus. Turns out Marnie was my gift giver this year, and eggs are no star drop, but I can definitely use them for recipes. I spent some time after the festival farming fiber in the mines because I had a lot of tea saplings needing crafting. Evelyn taught me how to make a garden pot on the morning of day 110, and Gus was in need of an albacore. We'd be at 10 hearts quickly with him at this gifting and questing rate. Most of my fiber was done growing, so I scythed it up before heading to gift Clint an amethyst for his birthday. Then picked up my watering can and asked Clint to upgrade my hoe as well. I decided to still check the traveling merchant in case she had a Maki roll for me, but she did not, and the rest of the night I worked on an oak resin farm since kegs would be key for profits in the coming year. Saturday morning meant my poppy was ready along with a large batch of winter forage, but my rice wouldn't be harvestable for another day at least. With the winter seeds, I made over 100 tea saplings, bringing my total for this run to an impressive 960 saplings crafted. And the Krobus stand-in had farmer's lunch on sale. There are no Maki rolls, but I'll take them. I had a lot of empty speed grow plots in the greenhouse, so I bought some starfruit seeds from Sandy and made sure to plant them first thing when I returned to the valley. I brought Gus his albacore at the saloon, and while there, picked up the pepper popper he had in stock. I was still hoping to earn 1 million gold, so I shipped a batch of excess gems, along with a few fish I thought I wouldn't need. I am pretty set on playing this run into year 2, otherwise I would just empty my chest and be done with it. I crafted an oil maker to start making truffle oil, and went to bed early that night, wondering what the final day of winter and this year had in store for us. On the final morning of year 1, I gave Krobus his daily present and hug, before getting to work clearing out my last batch of winter forage. My rice was ready, so after I scythed it up, I tossed it into the mill for processing. Then scythed up my last batch of fiber for the season. The traveling cart had no Maki rolls, but that was fine. I was resigned to my day-late community center fate. I picked up my hoe from Clint, as it would be severely needed tomorrow when spring sprung, and at 30 minutes to noon, I remembered I hadn't snagged my giant Junimo pal this run, so I raced over to the playground, barely making it in time to find the jolly green giant hiding out in the bushes. I crafted 95 more tea saplings, bringing my total crafted to over 1,050, and while I could probably head to the mines for more fiber and more profits, I don't want to rush about like mad on this final day like I normally would. Instead, I took a trip to see Robin and bought not 1, not 2, Not 3, 4, or 5, but 6 stacks of wood before the price increased tomorrow. And for the rest of the night, I got ready for the coming year by planting fiber seeds, decorating farm features, and heading down to the saloon to gift as many townsfolk as possible before the whirlwind of spring started tomorrow. And it was at the bar I stayed until closing time, deliberating what I discovered about myself and the town throughout this boycotting year. So, all in all, we only completed 1 out of 3 goals, but if you ask me, it was the most important of them all, as I felt a special joy with every happy morning hug. My final dream of the year was of the snow melting, allowing the true beauty of the forest farm to shine through. And as I left the farm, running through the fresh spring grass towards the town center, I did so with a song in my heart and a plan in my head. First thing on Spring 1st, I gave my wonderful housemate a present and a hug. Then, out of habit, checked in with Gus to see what he had at the saloon today. Kent stopped by to introduce himself, and I realized the silver lining in not finishing the community center year 1, as now I would get some bonus friendship with Kent. My day's optimism was slightly dashed by a letter I received in the mail, but I moved on and collected all the ingredients needed for the maki roll, the final item for community center completion. Saying goodbye to the Junimos was bittersweet, as I had decided not to have them join me on the farm in this playthrough, but I will try to find some cutie stand-ins in the future. It was Monday, so I picked up a special order posted by Gunther. Then it was back to the farm to set up a little crop area with my night market seeds, which I finished up shortly before 10. Tuesday morning, the letter came along with achievement notifications to show the community center friendship bonus was officially complete, and I joined the town for a much-deserved party at the freshly renovated building. I went with the reasonable dialogue option instead of yeeting Morris out of the building, and in an odd switch-up, Pierre suggested a boycott of his own. Okay, Pierre, feel free to have the town boycott Joja with me, but I'm still not lifting the boycott on you. Much? You see, it was about now I'd set my sights on reaching perfection for this run, and there are 6 specific items I'd need to purchase from Pierre in order to reach perfection. And no, a backpack upgrade isn't one of them. I'll need to buy 2 different rare crows, 3 recipes, and some vinegar for cooking. I gave a peace offering to Pierre because the speech he'd given was for the benefit of the town, even if there was selfish intent. And later that afternoon, I dropped by the desert to chat with Sandy and pick up some rhubarb seeds. Back in town, I picked up the rare crow sold by the dwarf, and then had a little laugh as a silly fairy graced me with her presence. She must have heard about my rice problems the previous year. Wednesday morning, I got a cryptic letter from Willie, but I already knew what he wanted to show me, so I made sure to head over to the beach with supplies in hand later that afternoon. I dropped off the 5 battery packs, 200 hardwood, and 5 iridium bars needed to make the boat seaworthy once more. We are now one little sleep away from the next and possibly most important step in our adventure. Ginger Island, here I come. Spring 4th meant the first time I would be gifting Kent for his birthday, and since I didn't have access to the recipes for his loved gifts yet, I resorted to giving up one of my precious prismatic shards, placing him fairly middle of the pack when it came to my relationships in the valley. Not bad for 4 days of acquaintance. And now, time for my maiden voyage to the island. Heading to the volcano, I realized I forgot my watering can, but still managed to find enough walnuts to unlock the western island, planting the melon and wheat I'd need grown later on for the gourmand frog. No garlic seed yet, but I had hope that the traveling merchant would come to my aid. While on the island, I met Birdie and started the Pirate's Wife quest, placed down an island chest that would be vital due to my lack of inventory space. Then headed back home, stumbling into my first ever experience with Krobus's 14 Heart event. Let's just say it was a levitating experience. Day 117 was the first Friday of the year, and that meant my first chance at being disappointed by the traveling cart's wares this year. Though it wasn't all bad, as she had an apple I might need for shipping, just in case the bats don't bring another. Next, I got to work running about for Birdie's quest, starting off with Kent and his war memento, and finishing up with trading Willie a worm in exchange for a pirate's locket. I returned the locket to Birdie on Ginger Island, and then spent the evening planting a large batch of starfruit in the light of the fireflies. I headed home that night in time to discover Pumpkin giving birth to a new baby pig, who I named Truffle because I was caught off guard and didn't have a tea-related name on standby. Day 118 was a Saturday, but Willie was kind enough to bring me to the island even on his day off. Once there, I hunted and slayed my way towards the walnuts needed to unlock the lovely little island sleeping hut. I got to officially meet Leo and gave him the first of many gifts, as I wanted to get him to 10 hearts as quickly as possible. Later on in the volcano, I found out very quickly that I should always keep an inventory slot empty unless I wanted to lose precious resources to the lava. But that is easier said than done, given the variety of items dropped by the mobs here. I woke up the next morning on the island and took the opportunity to unlock the dig site, freeing Professor Snail and collecting the rest of the bone fragments needed for Gunther's special order request. I headed back to the valley in time to have Clint open a few geodes and placed the bones inside the museum receptacle. It was Lewis's birthday, so I made sure to bring him a nice cup of tea before the day was over, then stumbled into an unpleasant conversation between Marnie and him. I would feel bad that they fought on Lewis's birthday, but he really brought that on himself. My first fiber crop of the year was ready, so I ended the night with a satisfying scything session. Day 120 was a very good luck day. It also happened to be the day that Gus decided to finally serve up the Maki roll. Pierre tried to lure me to his shop with a fancy schmancy dating bouquet, but I already had the star drop from rooming with Krobus, so there was no need for a spouse in my future. Today was starfruit harvesting time in my greenhouse, and I decided that called for the production of more kegs. That golden clock isn't going to buy itself. The northern farm was feeling a little cramped with all the animals, so I moved the barn and coop to give the animals more room to roam. Then took advantage of the lucky day by spelunking in the cavern until bedtime. Overnight, I reached level 10 farming from the starfruit, and if I'm being honest, I'd completely forgotten that I hadn't reached it before then. Again. Of course, I selected artisan. The next morning, I crafted a few tree fertilizer to get my oak farm up and running. I'd neglected checking the special order board on Monday, so I made sure to stop by and picked up Evelyn's quest on my way down to Willie's for a cruise over to the island. Once there, Leo got a lovely present, and I spent my evening hunting for dragon teeth in the volcano. Heading home in the wee hours with one. I got one, and passed out in my hut for my efforts. But I did wake up to the notification that I had made my first million overnight. Back in the valley that morning, Marnie sent me a very intriguing letter, and I placed picking up an auto grabber on my to-do list. I planted down some spring seeds near the piggy's new locale as a failsafe for completing Evelyn's special order request, then headed down to purchase my auto grabbers from Marnie. I have relationships to work on, so I brought Vincent a golden grape for his birthday, then checked in on my monster eradication progress. I was really close on a few goals, so into the mines I headed, slaying the final skelly as the sleepy hours arrived. Thursday morning, I traversed my keg maze to give Krobus his daily hug, then tappered up the oak trees that had grown overnight, and then it was time to buy a ticket to Calico. Thursday meant Sandy had deluxe speed grow in stock, and I would mention how much cheaper she sells it for than Pierre, but we don't buy from him anyhow on this farm. Next, it was time to drain my account with more starfruit seeds. This crop, while being extremely expensive, is also one of the most profitable, so I was counting my lucky stars I had the year 1 base funds to start my starfruit empire. I spent the rest of the night hunting for goodies like this crystallarium in the cavern, and working on my monster slayer goals. More oak trees were ready for tappers on day 124, and since it was a Friday, I made sure to check what the traveling cart was selling. I do this every Friday and Sunday, so we'll probably only mention it moving forward if I find something interesting in her wares. I finally triggered the Dark Talisman quest, but instead of heading to complete the quest, I ended up in the regular mines hunting bugs for that elusive ancient seed. Early the next morning, I chatted with Krobus about the bug lair, and he agreed to let me in, even complimenting me on my sturdiness. Once outside, I was greeted by a giant cauliflower crop. He and I were immediate cauliflower buds, until I axed him down to make room for more crop profits. Today was the Egg Festival, but I wanted to acquire the Dark Talisman, so I went down through the southern town entrance, retrieved the talisman from the lair below town, and made it out in time for the festival, with no one in town the wiser. I don't think they'd like to know how most of their houses are resting mere feet above a mutant swamp of sorts anyhow. Today was one of the festivals I could choose to forgo my boycott of Pierre for the sake of perfection, and yet there was a chance for the traveling cart to bring me a strawberry that I could ship or seed, allowing for an additional method of acquisition, and therefore not an acceptable purchase from Pierre given my run goals. So I consoled myself by beating the kiddos at the egg hunt for some prize money, then made a late night patrol into the mines looking for seed-touting bugs. My latest batch of fiber was ready for cycling on day 126. I tooled about with townsfolk most of that day. Clint was kind enough to find me a golden coconut, and I was able to donate another missing artifact to the museum. Then it was time to finish up the Witch's Lair quest I'd started yesterday. I opted to fish up the free void mail for the henchman, and returned the wizard ink to him in no time flat. This granted me the first view of the obelisks and clock that would monopolize a majority of my resources to come. I'd planted a lone amaranth in my starfruit greenhouse for Marnie's request, and I decided to replant another one for selling after harvesting that crop. And tonight was a particularly exciting time, as my very first batch of starfruit wine was ready for shipping. It was a relatively small batch, but hey, you have to start somewhere. On day 127, Evelyn asked me to bring her a leek for George, and I wondered if she'd forgotten her special request for 12 more. But I brought her the one, just so I wouldn't get confused on the amount I needed when finishing up that special order. I also picked up a new special order from Willie, as the recipe reward was something I'd need in order to achieve perfection. Then it was on to Ginger Island, where I unlocked the trading hut. And before you ask, but Aubrey, why not wait and save up for the resort so you can have access to even more walnuts? And my answer to that is, yeah, I probably should have done that. But I had bananas on the brain, and I wanted to get a sapling in the ground as soon as possible. A tiger slime was kind enough to drop a prizzy that of course I didn't have room for due to my lack of backpack upgrade. Yes, I will keep complaining about inventory space, and no, I will not be doing anything about it. Then it was time to attempt the dreaded Simon Says. The intro sounded like the start to a Willy Wonka song, and I lucked out on the pattern. Miraculously beating the task on my very first go. Overnight, the icky sticky Joja Mart was struck by lightning, and I resolved to have the theater up and running as soon as possible to aid in friendship progress. I headed back to the farm the next morning and had to toss the Tomka soup Sandy sent me on the ground because, you guessed it, bag space. I spent too much time out in the rain clearing up any unused hoed area, since I think the pigs need a completely empty block in order to find their truffles. Then it was back to the mines on the bug hunt, this time aided by a hearty dose of monster musk. And I have to report that after spending all night in the mines, I didn't get the seed I was searching for. Though I did make some progress on Willie's quest and finished up the rock crab slayer goal. Day 129, I had a spring forage harvest ready, meaning I had plenty of leeks available for George's surprise. But first, my melon was ready on the island, so I displayed it to Sir Froggy for a nice bounty of walnuts. He also tossed in some walnuts for the wheat I'd grown, leaving only the garlic to grow for the remaining 5. I was still boycotting Pierre, so I'd have to wait for the night market in order to purchase garlic seeds this year. I planted more starfruit on the island that would grow swiftly with the help of some deluxe speed grow, and headed home where I swapped out the starfruit in the greenhouse with more starfruit seeds. And I'll have to thank Marnie for selling me such fertile piggies, because Pumpkin gave birth to yet another piglet who I named Caramel. Bright and early Thursday morning, I toted the leeks over to Evelyn, only to have her body block me from depositing them in the oven. I really didn't want to push her out of the way, but I had a busy day ahead of me. My next stop was to see Sandy for more deluxe speed grow, and starfruit seeds for planting on the island. My goal was to eventually have the island full of starfruit growing at 10 days per harvest instead of the usual 13. If I kept up with replanting, I would only need to use speed grow 1 time per plot, saving me a ton of money in the future. My island starfruit harvest produced enough walnuts that I was able to open the island resort, so I took the opportunity to fish up a stingray before the pirates took over the cove for the night. Checking in on my door stats, I'd found 78 walnuts so far, but I'd need to unlock the room quickly in order to start earning the gems needed for a few recipes. Plus, I'm a little curious to know the status of my perfection progress. The island graced me with a rainy day the next morning, so I took the opportunity to visit the mermaid. Nuts, I know. Then onto the volcano for monster slaying and walnut collecting. I also decided to pick up the recipes the dwarf was selling on floor 5 of the volcano, and spent some of my hard-earned walnuts on a handy escape chute. I would have spent more time on the island, but there was a classy lady waiting for me back in the valley. And lo and behold, she had a garlic for sale. I could turn this garlic into a seed to plant on Ginger Island. This would be much quicker than waiting for the night market, and garlic is a very fast crop, so I might even be able to propagate it enough to have the 13 total needed for shipping, cooking, and crafting well before the year is over. Back on the farm, goodies were waiting for me in the mail. Lewis had sent me some moolah, and Evelyn sent me the glorious coffee maker. I still needed bug meat for Willie, so that night I spent in the mines on the hunt. The next day, we were still short on bugs, so after a dousing of monster musk, I headed back into the mines, killing any bug I saw until finally reaching my goal. I was still drenched in musk, so I spent the evening working on Monster Slayer goals in the lower levels. Please don't tell Krobus. Speaking of Krobus, I decided he deserved a cleaner path to his room, so after the wine was ready, I removed kegs from the house. I'd relocate them to the quarry later, but first I stopped by the traveling cart to find that my strawberry gamble had paid off. I could merely ship this strawberry for perfection, or try my luck with the seed maker to grow unlimited strawberries of my own. That afternoon, I cleared up the wine and some debris at the quarry, and set a batch of starfruit to keg in my growing production line. Back at the farm that night, I started taking stock of the cooking ingredients needed for each recipe and set them aside in the fridges for ease of cooking as the recipes and other ingredients became available. It's the start of the final week of spring, so I made sure to pick up the special order posted by Robin on my way to the island to plant the garlic needed for the gourmand. Gus was on the island today, so I picked up the mango wine for the missing bundle, along with the tropical curry recipe needed for perfection. And the rest of the night, I spent in the volcano, hoping for the dragon teeth still needed for the banana sapling. My tour of the volcano the previous night left me with 4 of the 5 dragon teeth needed, so back into the volcano I went, managing to snag 3 more teeth in the foyer alone. But I wasn't done yet. I was on a mission for walnuts, making it to the forge and the walnuts found there fairly early in the evening. I stopped by the island trader for my desired sapling that I planted in the greenhouse, along with the mango once back on my farm that night. The day of the flower dance meant I needed to select a dance partner, and based on my current relationships, it looked like Leah was the lowest relationship bachelorette that would accept my dance request. Once at the festival, I took care of making my required perfection purchases from Pierre first thing. He was selling the tub of flowers recipe needed for crafting perfection, along with the rare crow number 5 that was needed to earn the recipe for the deluxe scarecrow eventually. With that unsavory task out of the way, I changed my mind on dance partners and headed to ask Maru if she'd dance with me. She said yes, and the rest of the festival was history. Before heading to sleep that night, I shared the spirit of the day's festivities with the lone Junimo in the abandoned mart. Day 137, I was on a mission to complete the missing bundle, so I made the hike over to the witch's lair. It took some time, but I eventually reeled in the void salmon needed and realized I was only 3 fish away from completing that collection. While in the area, I hauled up the ornate necklace that I gave to Abigail before donating the final item needed to complete the missing bundle. Goodbye, my lonely little friend. Next task on my list was fishing up the slime jack from the bug lair, and I wanted to head to the desert for the scorpion carp, but Pam had other plans, and I was fresh out of desert totems. So I decided to boat to the island instead, where I found the aqua bird on the western side. I headed to the gem pedestals, where I planned to leave a few gems to save on carting them over in the future when... Does this mean that, yes, the walnut room is finally open? Feeling brave, I picked up the Skull Cavern Invasion quest as the 40 gem reward would really help out on recipe purchases. I checked the perfection tracker and saw I was at 35%. That night, the old mart underwent a mystical transformation, and I woke up to half my crops of starfruit and the garlic completely grown. The gourmand frog approved of my garlic, I think. Later, I made my way to the desert for a couple warp totems, a large quantity of starfruit seeds, and to fish up the final desert fish needed for perfection. Then it was back to the island to reseed the grown starfruit crops, and finally into the greenhouse to do more of the same. On my way to give Pierre for his birthday, I ran into Abigail, who probably wished she didn't ask me for help with her game. And Pierre got a rabbit's foot because he'd need luck to financially survive my continued boycott. Before bed, I stopped by the new theater to pick up a few tickets for future viewing. The final spring Saturday, I started out with a hug from Krobus, then continued on to my daily farm chores. Even though we were at 8 hearts already, I brought Emily a present for her birthday, then asked Jas if she'd like to see the spring movie since she and I had the lowest relationship out of the residents who loved that film. Next, Robin received the hardwood she was after, and I headed to the island to set up a few more crops I'd need for cooking recipes. My final goal of the night saw me up in the volcano chasing after the lava eel and that Master Angler achievement. The wee hours of night were spent prepping my packs as I'd put off the cavern dive for the final day possible. Here's hoping it's a decent luck day tomorrow. It's the final day of spring, and the fortune teller says, "Yay, we've got good humor." Now off to the desert, where I managed to finish the pepper wreck slaying goal fairly early in the day. A pressure nozzle dropped from a serpent on floor 27, so I was sure to make room in my pack for that gem. But there was not too much else to report, and I blasted through the final few floors with my massive staircases. Whoa! Before heading home, I made sure to stop by the desert trader for a few artifact troves, as I was missing some key museum donations, namely that darn ancient seed. Once back home, I found the star drop Willie sent waiting for me in the mailbox. 6 down, 1 to go. I capped off the season by kegging a fresh batch of starfruit in my quarry kegs. The start of summer means only my coffee plants survived, but instead of doing a mass summer replanting, I headed to see what requests were on the special orders board. I would need the recipe obtained from Caroline's request, so I picked it up, even though she was asking for the dreaded ginger shipment. Then it was on to the walnut room to see what options awaited me there. I decided to go with Danger in the Deep, as access to radioactive ore would provide a nice income source in the future. Then I picked up the Junimo chest with my hard-fought gems. Recipes could wait, but my lack of inventory could not. Placing one chest on the island and another back on the farm meant I could leave tools I didn't need consistently there and still have access to them from either farm location. I looked into the mummified frog in the jungle, acquiring a golden walnut upon turn-in, before heading back home to place the companion chest near my farm entrance. I spent the rest of the day planting some of the summer seeds I'd picked up at the night market the year before, and utilized my fancy cavern nozzle for a side field of wheat. Day 142 was about one thing and one thing only. Danger mines! No, but seriously, I spent a good portion of this day traversing the mines until I noped out on a squiddy-infested floor 18. But in better news, I found another pressure nozzle that I used on a secondary field full of wheat. The next day, I had Clint open a few troves for me. Then it was back to the mines, hoping for a bit more progress than yesterday. I made it to floor 30 before deciding to call it for the evening. Not too bad for a shabby luck day. Thursday was more the same, though I brought a pink cake with me as I would need to find Jas at some point today to wish her a happy birthday. I took a break from the mines midday to purchase deluxe speed grow from Sandy, along with another large batch of starfruit seeds to ramp up my planting on the island. I found Jas observing the cows at Marnie's, and she loved the pink cake. Then it was back to the danger mines. I reached floor 50 extremely late that night, and passed out right on my doorstep. Hopefully, they don't notice Krobus if someone carries me inside. I'm a glutton for punishment, so relatively early the next morning, I was back in the mines, reaching level 85 before calling it for the night. Day 146, and you guessed it, I found myself back at the danger mines. The clock was quickly running out, and I needed to reach the bottom ASAP. At 7, I reached floor 100, and shortly after midnight, I made it to the bottom, granting me a few more gems for my efforts. The next morning, a batch of wine was ready, so I spent some time refilling all the kegs with starfruit, and added a few more kegs to the line. Kegging left me low on starfruit, so I was relieved to see the greenhouse batch was ready, and that meant a nice batch of starfruit was ready on the island as well. And I decided to expand those crops even further, complete with a hearty helping of speed grow. More crops on the island were ready for tending the next morning, and I had enough speed grow and seeds to even out my southern island crop. Then it was time to protect my precious crops from spreading weeds. The Danger Mines quest was available again, so I selected it for the hefty gem reward, and spent a chunk of my current gems on some of the recipes I'd need for perfection. I thought I might be able to harvest the hot peppers in time, so I selected the crop order special order posted by Lewis, and later that night I brought Gus a juicy orange for his birthday, bumping us up to 10 hearts. The night was still young, and I had a week to reach the bottom of the mines, so I made sure to chip out a few floors before bedtime. Tuesday was a bad luck day, so I spent the morning working on the cooking and crafting needed for perfection. I took a look at my shipping progress to advance more in that category as well. Then onto the Adventurers Guild to check in on eradication progress. I had a few hours to kill, so I trekked over to the danger mines, where I made it to level 20 before heading back home and had a wicked visitor come bedtime. Lewis reminded me that the luau was tomorrow, but for today's tasks, I started out by picking up the recipes I was missing from Robin's shop, dropped a cauliflower off with Maru for her birthday, and continued on to make more Danger Mines progress. It was a good luck day, so I managed to reach floor 50 late into the night. Before the luau started on day 151, I spent some time in the kitchen cooking up questionable algae soups. I thanked my lucky stars that the Batcave had an apple I'd need for cooking, so I tossed it into the fridge for later, and before I knew it, it was time to join the festivities on the beach. I tossed in a gold quality starfruit that would grant me the maximum friendship bonus, and then it was time to eat. I'd placed some beets in the mill the night before, so all the sugar I needed for recipes was ready that next morning. So I used a chunk of it to craft additional dishes, and then, you guessed it, mine progression time. I developed a bit of a tummy ache, so decided to give up on the mines after only 5 levels of progress, and headed up to work on my relationship with the dwarf. I headed back to the mines and made another 5 levels of progress. Then it was back to the farm to work on crafting. Day 153 was Alex's birthday, so I brought him a salmon dinner for breakfast. Then headed to give Gunther a soapstone Clint had found in a geode for me. We're getting so close to that complete collection. Dwarf agreed to catch a flick with me, and I'm pretty sure he liked the experience. Then it was back to the mines. I flew through the remaining forest floors with the help of staircases because screw those floors. Near 11, I blasted my way to floor 90. Since I had just one day to traverse the remaining 30 floors, I decided to dip into my rock stores to craft a few staircases for use tomorrow. Equipped with my staircases the next morning, I started into the mines at a decent hour, and by 1, I had reached floor 100 with a decent chunk of my staircases in reserve. Wanting the quest to be over, I flew through the last few floors with the help of staircases, and at 420 had the gems stashed away in my wallet. Very nice. I spent the night catching fish needed for recipes and hoping to find that elusive ancient seed in a lucky treasure chest. And while I didn't find a seed, I found a chest in a chest. Living off the land told me not to worry about leaving my horse around, but joke's on them, cause I don't have a horse. I had considered getting one, but that would mean wanting a horse flute and using the gems I'd need for recipes, and have to find space on my farm. Long story short, I won't be getting a horse this run. Speaking of things I don't have, I'm still missing 2 items to complete the museum. The dried starfish and that darn ancient seed. Luckily, Willie's Juicy Bug quest is available today, so I can kill 2 bugs with 1 sword as I work toward this quest while hunting for something ancient. I decided to forego the quests available for gems, but did take a peek at the perfection tracker and saw that my cooking and crafting had been paying off relatively well, and I was able to purchase all the available recipes aside from the hopper with my current gem count. While still on the island, I fished up the fossilized spine, which was the final piece needed for the large skeleton. I now had enough walnuts to build the warp totem home, and I did a little more cooking that night before heading to bed. Day 156, Clint opened up a trove with the dried starfish for me, so the ancient seed is officially the final museum donation needed for completion. Truly the worst luck I've ever had on this item. But instead of heading to do a little bug hunting, I decided to stop by the desert for more starfruit seeds and to chop down a batch of the trees I'd planted there. Money making is a priority, so I made sure to harvest and replant any starfruit ready, then saw I had only harvested 18 ginger in about as many days, so I needed to get a move on if I wanted that solar panel recipe, which I did want, nay, need for perfection. Wednesday morning, I set up a few more jars, took care of the other half of the island starfruit, gave Sam a cactus fruit for his birthday, then musked myself up for a full afternoon in the mines. I found a bug infestation on floor 21, and this was the luck I needed to, dun-da-dun, wait for the realization. I'll notice eventually. There you go. It was still early enough to visit Gunther, so I submitted my donation and finally heard that dulcet ding to notify the collection was complete. I got the star drop, ancient seed, and recipe. But here's the kicker. I still need another ancient seed in order to craft that recipe. So back to the mines and that bug-infested floor, where I collected enough bug meat for Willie, but didn't manage to snag a second ancient seed. The next day, I made a batch of hyper speed grow that I used to fertilize my ancient fruit seed. I'd need to ship an ancient fruit, and the sooner I did this, the better I'd feel. I heard tiger slimes might drop some ginger for Caroline's request, so I emptied out Slime Hill, but all I got was a journal scrap, though I am still missing the ostrich egg for shipping, so I won't complain about advancing through those scraps. More slimes could be found in the volcano, so I headed that way, managing to find exactly 0 ginger my entire evening there. Progress on that quest really isn't looking good. Day 159 is Demetrius's birthday, and I had been slacking in the friendship department this run, so I took the opportunity to make today a gifting day. I also broke my Pierre boycott, but only to purchase the grass starter recipe needed to complete crafting, and exactly 4 vinegar that were required for cooking. I didn't buy any seeds, so you can save your little survey, Pierre. The rest of the day, I spent looking for ginger any way possible, but this quest is quickly starting to feel impossible, as I ended the day with another 65 left to collect. I have no horse, but was still feeling a need for speed, so I made sure my coffee processing was in place on the morning of day 160. Then, I was on the island that afternoon on the hunt for more ginger. Early in the evening, I gave up on the ginger hunt and headed back to the farm to work on my wine empire. I now have around 150 starfruit kegs churning out wine every 7 days or so, and I'm hoping to continue bolstering that number in the coming weeks. It was about now I remembered I need a couple house upgrades for the cask recipe, so I visited Robin on Sunday to commission her work, then headed to the sewer to reset my mining profession, before making a lap around town with my little bag filled to the brim with gifts. You can call me Aubrey Claus. And now I'm worried that all my gifts might have smelled a bit fishy. When heading to the theater with the dwarf later that night, I saw an interesting sight. Louis better have gotten her that ice cream sandwich she loves. Overnight, I switched to the blacksmith profession, as I had plans to sell as many radioactive bars as I could get my grubby little farming hands on. Monday morning, I gave Pam the pale ale she'd requested while she was on her way to the bus stop. Remind me not to go to the desert today? The dwarf got a ruby for his birthday, nearly maxing out our relationship, and I opted for a boat ride over that questionable bus ride, picking up the Prismatic Grange quest to earn the gems needed for the final recipe. I spent some time before bed blasting up radioactive ore in the mines, often hitting myself in the process. Stopping in at the Adventurers Guild, Gil was holding on to my slime tremor ring for me, and I was excited to see I only had the mummies and magma sprites remaining to slay. But those would be on a list for another day, as tonight I only had eyes for green and shiny. My first banana was ready on day 163, and I knew just the ape to bring it to. At the forge later that afternoon, I combined my burglars and glowstone rings to make a fancy new combined ring, so that I could wear it and my slime tremors ring on my hunt for ore. I'd think about what to combine the slime ring with later, maybe. And then it was back to the volcano, hoping for ginger, slaying magma sprites, and being reminded how miserable it is to not have a backpack upgrade. Still on the island the next morning, I had a couple garlic ready, so I began to propagate them for even more garlic, as I would need 10 to craft the oil of garlic alone. I brought Willie an octopus for his birthday, then it was back to the mines to blow up more rocks. I sold 10 of my radioactive bars that night for a lovely 45k profit. Things seemed a little different at home the next morning. Oh, right, the house upgrade. I'll fix this layout up later, because today I have starfruit needing harvesting. Then it was back into the volcano, where I lucked into the mummified bat that I happily made bag space for. Then stayed so long that I eventually passed out. To streamline farming a touch, I decided to forego harvesting the early half of my starfruit field yesterday, so that my entire island crop was now ready on the same day. With that gargantuous task out of the way, I sought to find Leo for his birthday. Then was greeted with the cutscene allowing him to live in the valley, making including him on gifting runs all the more easy. I continued on my ginger hunt in the volcano, once again finding myself passed out in the mines later that night. But at least both my final home upgrade and Leo's new treehouse were completed that night. Day 167, a reminder of my small bag, this time in the form of a potato. And since I had only 2 days to find 46 ginger, I was today's days old when I realized I was not going to finish the island ingredients quest. Wanting to expand my jarring and kegging productions, I took a trip over to the desert to restock on wood, heading home that night with a stack and a half. My quarry kegs were expanded again, and I had a nice batch of wine ready for shipping. On the final day of summer, I had ulterior motives when visiting the wizard that morning. You see, today is the day the desert obelisk was placed on the farm. I selected desert as the first on the farm for ease of access to my unnatural forest, and because I know how much booze I've given Pam throughout this playthrough. I drove myself home that night with another full stack of wood in my teensy tiny pack, and later made my way down to the beach for the calming culmination of the season. It's the first of fall, but before I got to planting, I gathered up items to donate for the Prismatic Grange. Neither of the special orders posted today have a recipe reward, so I decided to pass on them for the time being, and instead headed to the island to turn in my rainbow of donation, granting me enough gems to pick up the final recipe from the walnut room. Next, I bought the retaining soil recipe from the island trader, meaning I now had all the recipes available on the island, with the exception of the ostrich incubator. Once back on the farm, I planted a small selection of fall seeds I'd purchased last year at the night market, even setting up a large swath of pumpkins with the help of a pressure nozzle. On the 2nd of fall, I started out a mini gifting spree in the desert while picking up more seeds from Sandy. There was a jumble up on the playground when I went to gift Penny a melon for her birthday. Then it was on to the dwarf, as he still had a recipe I need. I took Leah to the movies, as Mysterium is one of her faves. And on my way home, goofed up a bit by gifting Leo some cookies. Maybe he knew I found them in the trash. That night, I finally rearranged the preserve jars to be in the same room, and worked on more crafting progress before bedtime. I was in the mood to gamble on day 171, so after gifting Sandy a lovely flower, I headed to the back room to take a spin at the slots. Luckily, time is frozen while you gamble, so I eventually made enough coin to pick up Rare Crow number 3, that I carried triumphantly out of the casino. Already in the desert, I spent the rest of the day in Skull Cavern until I grew tired of trashing items that didn't fit inside my teensy-weensy pack. On day 172, Krobus decided to jazz up the place a bit. I guess we could use a little kitchen table. Some of my relationships were lacking, so today would be another gifting foray, and I worked on mining radioactive ore in the danger mines the rest of the day. Time for Deja Vu Friday, as the morning was spent handing out gifts, including a birthday present for Elliot, and in the evening, I mined. Only this time in Skull Cavern, looking for ores for crafting and working on my mummy slaying. That brings us to Starfruit Wine Saturday. I left a smallish group of kegs going in the house to be sure not to forget my ever-expanding batch of kegs in the quarry. It was also a greenhouse harvest day, so you could say most of the day was about money, 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 money. I decided to spend the night on the island, as my starfruit crops would be ready there tomorrow, and my starfruit wine brought in a cool half-mil overnight. As anticipated, I spent the next morning on the island turning over the starfruit crops, then checked my perfection status on the tracker. That number was climbing, but was it moving fast enough to reach 100 by the end of the year? Back in the valley, the traveling merchant reminded me I still needed another ancient seed for crafting, but I was on my way to do something just as important. I now had all the bananas needed, so the island obelisk would finally have a home on my farm. I spent that night smelting and crafting, pushing ever forward towards my perfection goals. On Monday morning, my cranberries had grown, so I finally had the items needed for several cooking recipes, and it would just take another gifting round or two for many of the villagers to be at max hearts. So off I trotted with loaded pack, ending my excursion with a ladies' day on the beach. I lucked into the final snake vertebrae while clearing debris off my island farm. And with that, I finally completed the professor's collection, earning the ostrich incubator recipe for my trouble. The equivalent of an infested floor greeted me later in the volcano, and I got to work on magma sprite slaying later that night. Bright and early Tuesday morning, I saw I only had 2 golden walnuts left to find, and I knew one was buried along with that ostrich egg I was also in need of. And apparently, that was the hint the bird cared to share, so the other location will remain a mystery. I knew the Gourmand Cave was the best place to fish up trash, and trash has the highest opportunity to turn into journal scraps. My memory served me well, because within minutes, I had the scrap with the needed location. I dashed to the volcano grounds, only to realize I'd forgotten my hoe. Attempt number 2 went a little better, and I soon had the glimmering orb in my possession. On day 178, I made sure to craft the ostrich incubator and placed it in the barn. I put the egg in to incubate as, based on my calculations, I had enough time for the ostrich to hatch, grow, then lay an egg of their own before the end of the year, so it was not necessary to ship this one for perfection year 2. Speaking of shipping, only 5 items left on page 1 and 1 on page 2, and we had most of these items ready and able to ship. Then it was on to another day of gifting and catching a flick with the friendly neighborhood wizard. I brought Jody a chocolate cake for her birthday the next morning while out on another gifting run. That afternoon, I headed to the mines in search of earth crystals for the obelisk, and I honestly thought I'd have to mass open artifact troves to find another seed after how long that first one took, but I won't question the late luck. I crafted the seed immediately to be sure nothing happened to mess up this fortuitous find. I also completed the slime hunter quest posted by Lewis, but he was unavailable to reward me for the quest that night. The bok choy had grown on day 180, so I made the dishes waiting for that ingredient and later took a trip to Skull Cavern. Mummies were the goal of the day, so I ended as many as possible before heading back to the valley. Time for another Starfruit Wine Saturday. Aren't these churning kegs one of the most beautiful sights in the valley? Today, the Perfection Tracker was looking pretty good thanks to my daily cooking and crafting sessions, and so was my earnings total that night. Sunday, pumpkin fun day. Profits from yesterday left me with enough funds to afford the water and earth obelisk, so I bought them both and placed them near my ponds. And the gifting week reset could only mean one thing: packs bursting to the brim with prezzies. I got a reminder from Lewis in the mail that I needed to collect 9 items for the Grange if I wanted to beat Pierre again, and of course I did. But first, I had a greenhouse full of starfruit to care for, and raced Emily to be the first to wish Sandy a happy birthday. That night, I spent time snacking on mummies in the cavern, then took far too long selecting items for the Grange based on color and shape. But I think it turned out looking great, and I obliterated Pierre's display with a respectable score of 117. After collecting my Grange items, I only had 1 bag space left, so I picked up a Rarecrow on the off chance I'd forgotten to last year. I really want to finish the Mummy Slayer goals, so I grabbed my bombs and headed back to Skull Cavern on day 185, and that's where I spent my entire day. The next day, I made a few more cakes to fill with hops, then headed to find Marnie for her birthday. She wasn't home, and we already had 10 hearts, so I guess I'm keeping that farmer's lunch. Magma sprites were on the menu, so I found as many as I could while traversing the volcano later that day. Now, don't be mad, but it was day 187 before I turned in my trash can for the final upgrade. I know, not upgrading my pack means I should have prioritized that upgrade, but I didn't, okay? Later that morning, I combined my slime charmer ring with an iridium band and continued on my hunt for magma sprites deep into the volcano. Saturday means starfruit wine time, and the pale ale was also finished, so I had pretty good timing on that one. I also expanded my quarry cakes and ensured they were full before checking my monster goals. Let's just say they were tantalizingly close to completion, so I made sure to finish the magma sprite quota that very night. Then remembered I had a dart walnut needing winning. It was tough, but after many tries, I was finally victorious. Bright and early the next morning, I picked up my final upgrade from Clint, then began my long day of gifting anyone not yet at full heart, capping off with movie night with the wizard. Then a trip to Skull Cavern for the final 2 mummies. Consider monster slaying done. The Perfection Tracker is filling up nicely, with 1 golden hiccup on line 3. Here we are, about to head into the last week of fall, so I have 5 weeks to earn the over 9 million gold needed for that tenacious timepiece. I also worried I wouldn't get the solar panel recipe, so I planted as many taro tubers as I had available on the off chance that Caroline's quest would be available again in the next few weeks. I lost track of time planting and ended up passing out amidst the freshly sown taro. The next morning, I continued the task of proliferating my garlic crops. Perusing through my relationships once back in the valley, I now had only 4 residents left on my gifting list. My barn ostrich was ready to hatch, but my pigs had bred themselves to capacity, so I needed to thin out the herd a touch in order to welcome in our new friend Egbert. I went on my now reduced weekly gifting spree, followed by an evening foray into the mines for as much radioactive ore as possible. Boy, how I love that slime charmer ring. I've got 99 ore, no 101. Now it's day 191. Since time was short, I'd taken to aging cheese in the cellar for quicker profits than wine would be, and I took an afternoon trip to the desert as I felt like wood was crucial for most of my money-making endeavors. Also, know that if I ever have hours left to spare in the evening, I'm likely in the mines searching for radioactive ore to smelt into bars to sell for a nice profit. For those of you wondering where I'm at for perfection, I have 1 item left to ship, am missing 4 cooking recipes from the Queen of Sauce, and have 4 items left to craft. Here's hoping Caroline reposts her special order. Oh, and there's that small matter of the millions needed for the golden clock. At least the starfruit was coming in fast with the fertilizer, and I was single-handedly keeping Sandy in business with my weekly visits. It's day 193, and I only have Evelyn and Harvey left to max hearts with. I've also gotten all the wallet items with the exception of Spring Onion Mastery, but that's neither here nor there, because there I have a lot of starfruit harvesting to do. Later, I musked up and hung out in the mines slaying dust sprites to restock my coal supplies. The next day, I went on a Skull Cavern run. If I'm being honest, I have no idea what I was after, but I did manage to find 2 prismatic shards before heading home to rearrange the kegs and have them refilled before bedtime. And now we've come to my favorite You think I'd know when it opens. And now we've come to my favorite festival, though I'm a bit annoyed at how tonight is going to go because I have that unsavory task of purchasing from Pierre. At least these are the final 2 items I have to buy from him for perfection. Rarecrow number 2 needed to receive the deluxe scarecrow recipe and the jack-o'-lantern recipe. I have a pumpkin waiting back on the farm for that one. On the final day of fall, I learned and cooked up a serving of fiddlehead risotto and was sent the recipe to craft a shiny new scarecrow. Most of the day was uneventful, and I spent the evening chasing down bouncy balls of coal. The first of winter is Krobus' birthday, so I gave him the best possible present, then was reminded by the telly that the crib in the northern room was completely pointless in this run, so I headed to have Robin remove it, allowing me to use the entire room for my freshly expanded preserve jar collection. After saying good morning to the herd, I checked the auto grabber and was excited to see that Egbert had delivered on the final item I needed to ship for perfection. In the bin you go. Later that night, I realized I forgot to check the special orders board, and here's hoping I planted enough taro. Just to be sure, I brought a batch of bones over to the island trader to pick up a few more tubers to plant, then got to work picking and replanting what I could. That final recipe will be mine. Mine! In 10 days' time, give or take a day or 2 for bouts of amnesia and forgetfulness. The wonderful full shipment achievement procced the next morning, so I can check shipping off my final to-do list. But as nice as that achievement felt, I was mildly perturbed today as I knew this was the day that I should say goodbye to a majority of my pigs. My goal is to reach perfection, and selling them will not only grant a good amount of profit, but it will save me on hay needed to keep them and the other animals happy. I sold all of the pigs that had reached max hearts, so the barn was left with Truffle and Caramel as the remaining pigs. Ironically, both of whom were offspring of Pumpkin. Later that afternoon, I also started the process of clearing out some of my chests to better see where I was at funds-wise. Day 200, we are getting down to crunch time, but luckily, I have been growing enough starfruit over the past 2 years that I have enough to start turning it into jelly as well as wine. I'm also using some of my kegs for pale ale, an extremely quick and profitable artisan good that I have a decent stash of hops for. And I now have enough garlic to craft that troublesome oil of garlic, leaving only the solar panel left to craft. I crafted up a nice batch of tea saplings that night to add a touch to my jelly and pale ale profits. Friday, day 201, brings us to another blissful wine day, and it just so happens to coincide with a greenhouse starfruit day, meaning the next day brought me to the island and my starfruit harvest waiting there. And in the afternoon, I added to my income diversity by crafting a good batch of tropical curry, as they grant a small profit when using basic quality ingredients. It seems like I just said this, but it's already starfruit jelly time again, and I am currently up to 180 starfruit jelly every 2 to 3 days. It's winter 8th, and the day of the ice festival, but first, a little fiber harvesting ASMR. Once at the festival, I fished like I had never fished before, catching a total of 7 lovely fish, and earning 2,000 gold for my trouble. On day 205, I traveled to the island to see that my taro was ready, and I could finally complete Caroline's special order. And while visiting the wizard to deliver an iridium bar, I took a minute to gaze longingly at the crux of my perfection endeavors. Just another 7.5 million left to earn in a little under 3 weeks. I'm not worried, you're worried. It wasn't a wine day, but I took time that evening to expand the keg patch because I may have lied. I am worried and will need all the kegs I can get. But the jingle of the legend achievement the following morning was just the inspiration I needed to get my mind focused on this monumental task ahead. There was also the final recipe awaiting me in the mail, so I crafted the solar panel with glee and placed it proudly on the lawn. Thursday morning, I was back in the danger mines searching for radioactive ore, managing to collect enough ore for 17 bars before heading home to take care of the wine needing cycling in the house and quarry, and raking in nearly $1 million gold overnight. Day 208, I headed to Skull Cavern, and let's just say the treasures found today were less than profitable, but I did make it home in time for my customary fruit jarring session. Evelyn is the final resident I need to max hearts with, so I brought her a diamond on Winter 13, then headed to the mines for the night to slay bouncing bundles of coal sprites. Not much to report on day 210, except that I cycled out my greenhouse for fresh starfruit seeds and headed to Skull Cavern for goodies and ores. We are in the final 2 weeks of the year, and I didn't stray too far from my pattern of processing produce in jar, processing produce in keg, harvesting and replanting starfruit crops, and taking trips into the mines to keep my furnaces burning. So we're going to fly through the next few days until the morning of Winter 20th. Evelyn sent me cookies in the mail, and I brought her a lovely purple tulip for her birthday, officially maxing out that final friendship in the valley. And then back to the money grind, even chopping down my tapper farm for wood to craft tea saplings. On the penultimate Sunday, I learned and crafted bruschetta, so only the shrimp cocktail left to go. We'll skip forward again to Winter 25th and the Feast of the Winter Star. Now, if you've made it this far in the video, you deserve to know the truth of this day. I reset it, like a lot, but let me explain. You see, I've never gotten the tea set in any of my playthroughs, and I love tea. I found out Leah was my gift giver, and she has the ability to gift the tea set, so really I couldn't not try. So I created my own Groundhog's Day, testing out how the gift Leah gave would vary based on the time I entered the festival. The day that stuck, I headed into town at precisely 12 p.m. and realized I had forgotten the pink cake for my secret pal Vincent, so I gave him the ancient doll I'd picked up on the way. Hope this particular one wasn't one used in some type of ritual, but he seemed to like it. Then I headed to the tree and received what I feel to be the best present in the game. I had over 10 million gold the next morning, so I got ready for my big purchase by setting up a little display platform, and then realized the clock was wider than I remembered. Don't worry, I fix it later. That night, I double-checked the perfection tracker, and there it is. All that's missing is that final cooking recipe. The next day, I tried my hand at farm decor and felt like I needed a nice outdoor spot to drink tea, then decided to move it to the other side of the clock. I wanted to remodel my bedroom as well, but someone was in the way. Cats, am I right? It's the final day of year 2, and I'm so grateful I had Krobus with me on this challenging run. I cooked up the shrimp cocktail, completing the cooking achievement, and effectively achieving perfection by the end of year 2. A feat that I have never been able to do before. I think it was the restrictions themselves that allowed me to really focus on reaching perfection. Not buying seeds from Pierre meant I was spending my money with Sandy and that lucrative starfruit crop. Not having extra backpack space forced me to focus on one project at a time instead of being all over the place like I usually am. Also, having Krobus as the only housemate available without the bouquet meant I knew to focus on meeting them and cultivating that relationship. Of course, I had been researching money-making strategies on previous runs, such as radioactive ore farming. The tea sapling boost from the first year really helped get my starfruit farm churning. If you're curious about that particular strategy, I do have a video on quick Caroline befriending to receive the sapling recipe as early as possible. Not wanting to be overshadowed by perfection, my pigs proved they were still a fertile lot when Caramel gave birth on this final night of the run. And well, I couldn't not. Welcome in, Subby. With the dawning of the day, I knew Grandpa was proud, and that rumble in the distance letting me know the Perfection Summit was now open might have interrupted his speech a little bit, but he didn't seem to mind as I received all 4 candles to see me off for my final trek up to the top of the valley. And while I am a bit disappointed to see Lewis at the summit instead of Krobus, I know they'll always be with me. For the moral of this run, be sure to follow your dreams. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.